We interrupt this broadcast for an emergency news update. Due to the ongoing spread of an unknown virus, to safeguard the lives of all citizens, the capital of Japan has issued an official notice to fully close all national borders effective immediately. A nationwide lockdown is in effect. All inbound and outbound travel is prohibited until the epidemic eases completely. Inside a hotel in Osaka's Kansai Financial District, a television blares the breaking news. An unknown virus spreading? Multiple countries slamming their borders one after another? Staring at the identical official narrative flooding every online platform, Kong Ming lets out a mocking scoff from his bed. It's useless. This isn't some unknown virus at all. It's the revival of spiritual energy. The doomsday has officially begun. In 10 days at most, hordes of zombies will erupt, and the entire world will fall to ruin. And this is only the start of the disaster. The true, horrific cataclysm is still to come. Recalling the hellish carnage he witnessed in his past life, an unmissable flicker of dread crosses his eyes. Kong Ming is a reincarnator. That is why he knows exactly what lies ahead. People with weak physical resistance cannot withstand the influence of spiritual energy and suffer grotesque mutations, turning into mindless walking corpses. These creatures are fiercely aggressive and highly infectious, in short, zombies. Yet every government is blinded by superficial symptoms, labeling this catastrophe nothing more than a viral outbreak. It will only be too late when mutated flora and fauna run rampant and human superpowers awaken. When authorities finally grasp the truth, the vast majority of humanity will have turned into the undead. I have 10 days left. I can't waste another moment. I must make advanced preparations and plan for every contingency. Kong Ming had just finished his college entrance exams and traveled to Japan for a short vacation to clear his head. Fate repeats itself exactly as it did in his previous life. Spiritual energy revives right on schedule, and Japan seals its borders without delay, trapping him in Osaka and cutting off all routes back home. He is a stranger in a foreign land, with no allies to rely on. What am I supposed to do? Kong Ming sinks into deep thought. With no one he can trust, his only option is to stockpile massive supplies first to survive the initial wave of disaster. Then he must find a secure hiding spot before the full surge of spiritual energy hits and lie low. Most importantly, he must stay far away from government refugee camps. Everyone knows the deep-rooted prejudice and hostility Japanese citizens hold toward Chinese people. This negative sentiment is ubiquitous. In his past life, Kong Ming fled to an official refugee camp hoping for safety. There, he had to endure endless humiliation and beatings at the hands of the locals. When food supplies ran dry in the camp and humanity's morality crumbled, he was brutally murdered and devoured by those vicious people. This nation's bigotry and cruelty are ingrained in its core, well documented throughout history. In this life, Kong Ming will never trust them an inch. He will remember every old wound and new grievance, waiting for the chance. As a reincarnator, Kong Ming possesses a unique cheat ability. After rebirth, he awakened two extraordinary powers. First, a massive spatial storage realm the size of a golf course within his body, capable of holding endless supplies. Second, the top-tier soul manipulation ability. Using his consciousness, he can invade others' minds, issue commands, and control their words and actions. But harsh reality crashes down on him fast. He pulls up his mobile banking app, staring at a balance of merely 8,600 Chinese yuan. This paltry sum is barely enough to buy basic daily necessities, let alone defensive gear to arm himself. Take out a loan? He will not turn 18 for another month. Just as Kong Ming frets over his predicament, boom. A deafening crash echoes from downstairs, followed by raucous shouting. He strides quickly to the window and glances down. A large supermarket at street level is being ransacked by a frenzied mob. Shoplifting riots? Kong Ming is surprised, yet not the slightest bit shocked. Japan has the world's most aging population. Young people embrace a nihilistic lifestyle, choosing to remain single, childless, and avoid property ownership entirely. Wages have stagnated for 30 years while prices soar, leaving the lower class scraping by. Now every country has closed its borders, severing all international trade, leaving countless citizens without income. For the destitute poor, looting shops has become their only shot at survival. In an instant, a sharp glint lights up Kong Ming's eyes. I have an enormous spatial storage space and superpowers. Why waste money buying supplies when I can just take them directly? It's fast and hassle-free. At this thought, a clear path forward unfolds before him. His heavy gloom lifts completely. Without further hesitation, he spins around, bolts out of the hotel, and heads straight for the supermarket downstairs. Chaos reigns inside the store, goods scattered all over the floor. Kong Ming sets a clear goal and marches straight for the food section to clear out everything in sight. Fresh meat, grains, cooking oil, rice, noodles, seasonings, bottled drinks, dairy, refrigerated goods, frozen ready meals, cooked bread, all of it vanishes at his touch, absorbed wholesale into his spatial storage as stunned onlookers gawk. He finally stops by the snack aisle, a faint smile tugging at his lips as he stares at rows of chicken feet. Chewy, savory, endlessly addictive, they are his favorite treat. Kong Ming tears open a bag and takes a bite, while his other hand sweeps across the shelves. Every last snack disappears instantly into his storage realm. This power is unbelievably convenient. Once the entire food section is emptied, Kong Ming hurries to the daily goods aisle. Personal care products, cleaning disinfectants, paper goods, daily disposable supplies, anything useful is taken without exception. The supermarket remains in total anarchy. Many shoppers watch Kong Ming's bizarre feats, chattering away in Japanese he cannot understand. The security guard is quick-witted. Seeing total order collapse, he abandons his post and joins the looting spree. Worse still, he slips into the monitoring room and tampers with the equipment, clearly wiping all surveillance footage. Kong Ming sees this and silently gives the guard a thumbs up. With no camera evidence left to incriminate him, he grows bolder, clearing out every single section of the store without restraint. Furniture, clothing, shoes, small household appliances, alcohol, local specialties, nothing is spared. Japanese people have small appetites. They can get by on tiny portions anyway. He does not fear arrest by local police. The cameras are gone, and all supplies sit safely hidden in his spatial dimension. Without proof, what charges could they possibly bring against him? Kong Ming's outrageous, inexplicable looting soon angers a short local man. Magical tricks, huh? When the man gets a clear look at Kong Ming's face, his arrogance spikes even higher. Damn it, a Chinese person. He cranes his neck, glares furiously at Kong Ming, and snarls in broken Mandarin, "Damn Chinese. You seized our Jiaoyu Islands, and now you dare steal our supplies. Get out of here. These looting riots are for Japanese citizens only." As he shouts, the short man pulls out a handgun and presses the barrel to Kong Ming's forehead. Kong Ming freezes slightly at the sight of the black muzzle, surprised. Japan enforces strict gun control laws nearly as rigorous as China's. Regulations tightened drastically after the assassination of their former prime minister. This act of aggression ignites a burning rage deep within Kong Ming. In his past life, he endured relentless beatings and abuse in the refugee camp, powerless to resist, before being killed and eaten. He had only intended to quietly stockpile supplies after reincarnating. Yet these onslaughts of insults from Japanese locals who dare to point firearms at him fuel a murderous urge surging through his heart. You're asking to die. Before the Japanese man can pull the trigger, Kong Ming lunges forward in a flash and clamps his hand firmly around the gun. With a single thought, the pistol vanishes from the man's grip, pulled into Kong Ming's storage space. What? The Japanese man's eyes blow wide open. He freezes rigidly, his mind going blank. He had held the gun tight in his palm. The moment this Chinese youth touched it, it vanished out of thin air. While the man stands dazed, the gun reappears in Kong Ming's grasp. The barrel slams hard against the man's forehead. Die, you Japanese brute. The second Kong Ming finishes speaking, a deafening gunshot rings out. Bang! Blood splatters everywhere. The local man collapses to the floor with a bullet wound to his head, lifeless on the spot. Traumatized by the horrors of his previous life, Kong Ming is no longer a naive student. But the true zombie apocalypse is still days away, and Japan's social order remains intact. A shooting murder in a busy downtown supermarket will spark a citywide manhunt. Kong Ming quickly stows the gun back into his spatial storage and melts into the panicked crowd. Shoppers who heard the shot spin around in terror, locking onto the corpse, but cannot spot him. Panic erupts throughout the supermarket, and the mob surges into chaos. A cold smirk tugs at Kong Ming's mouth. All surveillance footage has been erased, leaving zero evidence at the crime scene. A single dead body is not enough to pin the murder on him. He strolls unhurriedly through the aisles, continuing his systematic looting of every useful supply without pause. Those who have never lived through the end of the world can never grasp how precious resources become. Once doomsday arrives, humanity's living space shrinks drastically. All industrial and agricultural systems collapse entirely, halting all new production. Every grain of rice, every bottle of water represents a chance to stay alive. In mere minutes, every shelf in the massive supermarket is stripped bare, mountains of goods safely transferred to Kong Ming's spatial storage. He glances over the empty aisles, then focuses to check his panel. Host, Kong Ming. Superpowers, Spatial Storage LV.1 Proficiency, 88/100. Soul Manipulation LV.1 Proficiency, 0/100. Physical Fitness, 10 Baseline, 8. Mental Power, 11 Baseline, 8. Spatial Storage Usage, 0/1. Staring at the proficiency meters, Kong Ming's eyes fill with anticipation. He died in the apocalypse before awakening any powers in his past life, so he has no idea what unlocks at max proficiency. Just then, shrill police sirens wail in the distance, growing louder by the second. This supermarket sits in Osaka's bustling Kansai financial district. A shooting will draw an immediate, massive police response. Panic sweeps over the shoppers inside, who stampede toward the exits in a desperate rush. Within seconds, uniformed officers block every entry and exit, trapping nearly everyone inside. Staring at the sealed doors, Kong Ming stays calm and makes the opposite choice. If he tries to flee now, panicked witnesses will easily identify him, dragging him into endless interrogations and delaying plans. Rather than walk straight into a trap, he will clear out the supermarket's back storage warehouse and claim every last stockpile while the police are occupied. As long as he carries no physical stolen goods on his person, he can pretend to be an ordinary customer and slip away unscathed later. Having made up his mind, Kong Ming turns to the warehouse. He shoves open the heavy metal door. Rows upon rows of reserve supplies fill the space. Sacks of rice, flour, cooking oil, instant meals, bedding, clothing, and every kind of emergency provision imaginable. Kong Ming does not hesitate for a second. He sweeps his fingers across the stacks, and piles of goods vanish one after another into his storage realm. The instant the last sack of rice is absorbed into his space, a strange wave of energy erupts from within Kong Ming's body, flowing through every limb to comprehensively strengthen his physique. His previously slender frame rapidly broadens and fills out, forming perfectly proportioned, powerful musculature. Stunned by the sudden transformation, Kong Ming hurries into the restroom and leans over the mirror to examine himself. His facial features remain sharp and handsome, unchanged, yet his figure and aura are completely transformed. The frailty of his youth fades entirely. His bones are hardened, his body strong and muscular. He exudes a steady, imposing aura. He can clearly feel surging strength coursing through his veins. His physical capabilities now far outmatch 10 versions of his pre-apocalypse self combined. Kong Ming refocuses his mind to open his status panel again. Host, Kong Ming. Superpowers, Spatial Storage LV.2 Proficiency, 0/200. Soul Manipulation LV.1 Proficiency, 0/100. Physical Fitness, 20. Mental Power, 11. Spatial Storage Usage, 0.02. Reading the updated stats, Kong Ming immediately understands the mechanic. Leveling up spatial storage directly reinforces his physical body, drastically boosting his base fitness. He suspects that maxing out Soul Manipulation's proficiency to level it up will similarly raise his mental power. Before he can ponder this further, a flood of information surges into his mind, engraving a new skill. New skill unlocked, Spatial Teleportation. Skill effect, instantly teleport to any designated location within range. Stamina cost per use, 1 point. Cooldown period, 60 seconds. Spatial Teleportation. Kong Ming's eyes light up with unrestrained joy. Now he has nothing to fear. It seems maxing out superpower proficiency will keep unlocking powerful new abilities. As he revels in his new skill, Japanese police officers surround the restroom entrance outside. Come out from inside. We know you are hiding in the restroom. Step out with hands overhead. Kong Ming cannot understand a word of their Japanese shouting. Peering through the crack of the door, he sees 3 armed officers aiming their firearms straight at the restroom. Japanese police will not shoot without extreme provocation. But arrest would mean endless questioning, investigations, and evidence collection. Wasting critical time, he needs to stockpile supplies and prepare for doomsday. Before unlocking teleportation, he might have submitted to questioning. Not now. You'll never catch me. Kong Ming concentrates his mind, mapping out every inch of space within a 200-meter radius without blind spots. He locks onto an empty, unseen alleyway as his destination. In the next heartbeat, his figure vanishes entirely from the restroom. In an instant, he crosses 2 city blocks. He materializes in a quiet back alley behind the electronics mall next to the Kansai financial district. Standing on solid ground, Kong Ming feels an overwhelming rush of delight. This skill is incredibly useful. Unless they have real ninjas, they'll never lay a hand on me. His mind races with new possibilities. With infinite spatial storage and teleportation at his disposal, he can reach every corner easily. He can carry out far more ambitious looting missions from now on. First, he wants to test how quickly his depleted stamina recovers after using teleportation. This ability is too valuable to waste. He needs to manage its cooldowns properly to stay at peak condition. Kong Ming finds a public bench and sits down to rest, plotting his next moves. While looting is simple with his powers, surveillance systems raise risks. Nighttime is the optimal window for covert operations, when the streets fall silent and witnesses are scarce. Dusk is already falling. Having settled on his plan, Kong Ming decides to return to his hotel for a full night's rest. He will resume his supply runs in the early hours after midnight. His stamina fully restores to 20 points after exactly 10 minutes of rest. Not bad. One stamina point recovers every 10 minutes. If I time my teleportations well, I can maintain peak performance indefinitely. Kong Ming stands and walks back toward his hotel. Street cameras cover every road, so the police may trace his odd movements eventually, but such an investigation takes time, and he won't stay long-term. The sky darkens rapidly. Wailing police cruisers and ambulances race down the streets. The oppressive atmosphere of the coming apocalypse hangs thick in the air. Glancing through an ambulance window, Kong Ming spots a woman with a contorted, feral face thrashing violently on a stretcher, restrained by heavy straps as she snaps her jaws trying to bite anyone. Once the ambulance departs, Kong Ming returns straight to his hotel, takes a shower, and collapses onto the bed to savor this fleeting peace. In 10 short days, zombies will overrun the world. Sleep will never again come easy. He will have to stay vigilant against both the undead and desperate human survivors. Thankfully, Japan's tight gun control limits the threat posed by other survivors. Anyone armed with firearms will hold a massive advantage once doomsday hits. I will finish stockpiling supplies first, then hunt for weapons later. With his resolve set, he pulls a meal out. He pulls a whole roasted chicken and a can of cola out of his spatial storage, digging into his food greedily. He has not enjoyed such comfort in far too long. Tender roast chicken paired with icy cola tastes absolutely divine. Kong Ming pulls out his phone and sends warning text messages to all his relatives, friends, and classmates, urging them to prepare. He then composes a detailed email recounting every catastrophe he witnessed in his past life and sends it to China's National Security Department. He can only hope officials read and believe his warning. He has done everything within his power. Kong Ming is an only child. His parents died in a car accident the year before his college entrance exams, leaving him all alone. Greedy distant relatives even swindled away all his compensation money. Sending those warning texts is the least he could do for the people he once knew. Full and content, he lies back on the bed and drifts quickly into deep sleep. It was 2 a.m, and the alarm jolted Kong Ming awake right on schedule. He rushed through a quick wash, then pulled a full Ultraman Taro suit out of his spatial storage ring and slipped it on. A single spatial teleport later, he materialized in a shadowy corner of the Dotonbori Underground Mall. Though the Kansai Financial Center served as Kansai's financial heart, sitting right next to the Osaka Exchange, it lacked any massive comprehensive shopping malls. Recalling the infamous 3-all policy enacted by the Japanese invaders in history, Kong Ming made up his mind. He would leave no food, no useful supplies behind. If they adored the lights so much, he'd sweep everything away and strip the place bare. At 2 a.m., the streets were utterly deserted. Kong Ming closed his eyes, and the full spatial layout of the surrounding 200 meters unfolded clearly in his mind. He focused his will. A faint spatial ripple rippled outward, and he reappeared inside a pharmacy, empty save for rows of shelves. The pharmacy spanned a large area, lined densely with shelves crammed full of pharmaceuticals, bottles large and small, every kind imaginable. Though he could not read the Japanese script on the packaging, Kong Ming showed no mercy. Strip it clean, sweep every last item, leave nothing behind. In less than 5 minutes, the pharmacy stood bare. Kong Ming even stowed all the empty shelving into his spatial storage. He planned to find a woman to translate all the labels once he'd stockpiled enough supplies. Staring at the mountain of medicine and health supplements that covered an area the size of a basketball court, Kong Ming's heart hammered with excitement. With this massive stockpile of medical goods, once he found a safe place to settle down, he'd live without a single worry after the apocalypse hit. Japan is a vast land. I've barely begun gathering their supplies. There's still so much work to do. Kong Ming sighed dramatically, indulging his edgy, grand delusions. He activated spatial teleport once more, stepping into the greengrocer's shop next door to continue his 0 yen shopping spree. Mangoes, watermelons, apples. These fruits already carried steep price tags in Japan, and they would become unattainable luxuries 10 days from now. Kong Ming swept a hand through the air. Entire crates of fruits and vegetables vanished instantly into his spatial storage at an astonishingly rapid speed. Within 10 minutes, all loose crated produce had been cleared out, leaving only the refrigerated display cases. Dozens of these 3 to 4 meter long cold cabinets lined the walls, packed full of seafood and raw meat. Since he was here, he'd take everything. Kong Ming brushed his fingers lightly across the cabinets. One by one, the full refrigerators and all their contents vanished, transported into his storage space. His spatial ability proficiency climbed steadily yet again. Before long, the greengrocer's was completely emptied. Kong Ming tallied his haul, at least 10 tons of fruits and vegetables, plus 5 tons of raw seafood and meat. For a store of this size, the stock paled in comparison to shops back in China, all thanks to the Japanese tendency for tiny portion sizes and scraping up scraps. Still, the haul was more than enough for him, and this was only the start. His goal was to seize every usable supply, prioritizing food and medicine. Kong Ming moved on to the seafood section. He laid a hand on a fish tank, and in a handful of breaths, the tank and its giant lobsters vanished. This discovery filled him with elation. Who said spatial storage can't hold living creatures? This opened countless new possibilities. He could grow crops, process food, and more within the space. Ecstatic, Kong Ming planned to check if the crustaceans survived the transport. Just then, a startled shout echoed from the shop entrance. "Hey, what the hell? How did you get in here? Quit playing tricks. Come out right now." A blazing flashlight beam cut through the darkness as the guard spoke. He had spotted Kong Ming in his unmistakable Ultraman costume. Kong Ming turned to see a patrolling security guard clutching a nightstick in one hand and the flashlight in the other, trembling with fear. The harsh light searing his eyes irked Kong Ming deeply. He leaped into a dramatic Ultraman finishing stance pose, teleported behind the guard, and pressed a gun to his head. "Don't move. Drop your weapon, or I'll blow your brains out." The guard was a short, shifty-looking man. Watching the Ultraman figure vanish mid-flashlight beam had terrified him half to death. When cold metal touched the back of his head, and he heard Mandarin, he lost control of his bladder in fright. He quickly stammered in English. Okay, man, calm down, don't pull the trigger. I'll set the baton down right now." The guard slowly bent his knees to lower the nightstick to the ground. Damn, this little runt thinks he can slip away just because he's short. Kong Ming understood neither Japanese nor English, and misread the movement as an escape attempt. Without hesitation, he struck the man's neck with a knife hand blow, knocking him unconscious. A flick of his will, and the guard vanished into spatial storage. Holy hell, the space can hold living people too. Overjoyed, Kong Ming pulled the guard back out, drew a boning knife, and slit his throat. He could not leave the man alive to alert the police once he woke. Worse still, the guard had seen he was Chinese. If the man's testimony sparked mass retaliation against Chinese residents in Japan, countless innocent lives would be lost. Beyond that, Japan's historical crimes were unforgivable. This man deserved to be dealt with. Ending one malicious life was equivalent to saving countless innocents. Killing him was necessary. Once the deed was done, Kong Ming glanced up at the store's security cameras and flipped them off, an open provocation to Japan's authorities. It was time to avenge the humiliations of his past life. He would strip their land bare of supplies and let them starve once doomsday descended. This island nation held little goodwill in its people. When disaster struck, their inherent predatory instincts would surge 100-fold, driving them to steal food without mercy. Kong Ming caught his breath, teleported into the clothing store next door, and resumed his looting spree. Men's, women's, children's apparel, every garment vanished. No one knew how long the apocalypse would last. Preparation was everything. Next came a deli shop. Burgers, fried chicken, pizza, sandwiches, hot dogs, all in staggering variety. Kong Ming brushed his palm over the shelves, activating his spatial power to take the food and entire shelving units alike. This is incredible. Snacks, potato chips, chocolate, milk candies, rainbow drops. He took everything without discrimination. A single touch was all it took. Every edible item, without exception, went into storage. Freezers full of milk, soft drinks, ice cream, all of it. After that, Kong Ming hit the liquor store. Red wine, distilled spirits, beer. He swept every bottle visible without hesitation. Bedding, furniture, luxury goods, home appliances followed. Anything useful was seized. By 5 a.m., dawn was creeping over the sky, and Kong Ming decided to call it a night. He could already imagine the uproar when shop owners arrived at the financial center at sunrise and found their businesses completely ransacked. An Ultraman looting all of Japan? He walked to a hotel building and struck dramatic poses beneath a surveillance camera for fun. Satisfied with his stunt, he teleported boldly back to his room. Leaning back against the sofa, he pulled out a box of fried chicken and brewed a cup of coffee, savoring his meal as he mapped out his next raid. Full and content, he clutched an expensive wristwatch in one hand and his handgun in the other, drifting off to sleep. He woke again at 2:30 in the afternoon, rested fully and energized. After a light breakfast, with nothing to occupy his time, Kong Ming practiced his spatial ability to raise its proficiency, repeatedly removing and returning supplies to storage. His skill level climbed steadily. By evening, his proficiency maxed out. A familiar surge of power welled up inside him, flooding his body to strengthen his physique. At the same time, his spatial storage expanded drastically, gaining an area the size of an entire golf course. Kong Ming could now kill an ox with a single bare-handed punch. His maximum teleport range had increased to 300 meters. On top of that, he unlocked a second ability, Spatial Mark Transfer. By placing a spatial marker on a person or object, he could teleport to their location instantly. It worked no matter the distance, just like the fourth Hokage's flying Raijin Jutsu from Naruto. Kong Ming's face lit up with delight. This ability was game-changing. If he left a marker in his hotel room, he would no longer need to avoid surveillance cameras during his raids. He could teleport straight back to safety. Ha! The fun is only just starting. Only then did Kong Ming remember to pull out his phone and check the fallout from his night of zero-yen shopping. He opened Yahoo News, Japan's most popular national news application, and a bold headline blared straight at him. The headline read, "The Spatial Thief. An Ultraman ransacked the entire Kansai financial district overnight and brutally murdered a patrol security guard." Kong Ming's heart raced with pride. I finally hit the top trending headlines. He tapped the article to read the full report. At the top was surveillance footage of him clearing out the pharmacy. Footage of him killing the guard followed immediately after, then the written breakdown. This footage is not computer-generated. Every shop in the Kansai Financial Center was ransacked. The perpetrator appears to wield an otherworldly power, most likely spatial manipulation. We cannot rule out the possibility the culprit disguised themselves. Citizens are urged to stay vigilant. The comments section erupted with thousands of replies. OMG, is this real? Ultraman of all people? Tell me this is an April Fool's joke. I wish I had his power. It's amazing. How could this be our beloved Ultraman? We were supposed to believe in the light, but this is the wrong kind. Even if he's Ultraman, robbery on Japanese soil deserves death. This is an age of firearms. Any carbon-based life form will be taken down. Dozens more speculative and furious comments scrolled below, which Kong Ming ignored. He kept scrolling, finding more surveillance clips of him looting different stores. Angry Japanese comments flooded each clip. Baka. Bakayaro. Damned monster. He stole everything. Does he want us to starve? Find him and kill him. How dare he wear Ultraman's costume? This is a blatant insult. Kong Ming only felt one emotion, pure satisfaction. He closed the app and opened Douyin, China's short video platform. The atmosphere there could not have been more different. Holy crap, some guy dressed as Ultraman robbed Osaka's entire financial district in Japan. That's so badass. Ultraman truly represents the light, just as we were told. Well done. Ultraman belongs to China. This is all the proof we need. A single murder is nothing. Every Japanese citizen deserves what's coming, after all the lives they slaughtered in our history. Keep going, Ultraman. Burn that Yasukuni shrine to the ground while you're at it. Agreed, burn the shrine. A new plan sparked in Kong Ming's mind. Looking at his supportive fellow countrymen, he could not bear to watch them face the apocalypse completely unprepared. Let my identity be exposed if it must. I can't stand by and watch my people suffer without warning. Making up his mind, he activated his phone's video recorder. He summoned a handgun out of thin air, then stowed it back, repeating the motion several times. He added a written caption to the clip. The caption read, "Hello everyone. I am the man behind the Japanese Ultraman disguise. This is my spatial superpower. This is not a pandemic. This is the revival of spiritual energy. The apocalypse will arrive in 9 days. Stockpile supplies urgently." He hit publish, unsure if the platform would approve it. He resolved to do everything he could and leave the rest to fate. After posting, he returned to scrolling the news. Japanese authorities were treating this as a crisis. They deployed full police searches and issued a massive cash reward for any leads. Japan's government officials were seething. Their businesses were stripped bare. A patrol officer had been killed in cold blood, and the culprit openly taunted them on security cameras. It was no wonder they were furious. Ha ha! Kong Ming roared with delight. The more tormented Japan's people and leaders were, the better he felt. He needed to release the rage built up from his past life suppression, and he would not forgive their constant hostility toward China in this timeline. They want to hunt me down? I don't mind stirring up even more chaos for them. A cold glint flashed in Kong Ming's eyes as he devised a scheme. It was still daylight. More looting risked exposing him, and practicing his power had grown tedious. It was time to gather weapons and throw the city into turmoil. Japan's major arms stockpiles were locked away in military arsenals, hard to access, but police stations would hold a decent supply of firearms. With his plan set, he left a marker. Leaving a spatial marker in his hotel room, he changed into clean casual clothes and strode casually down to the lobby. The hotel receptionist stared with starry eyes. She looked practically ready to offer herself to him. Listening to her soft, sweet Japanese voice and admiring her graceful figure stirred restless thoughts in his mind. Once I've stockpiled enough supplies, I ought to find a woman to keep me company and unwind. Muttering to himself, he grabbed a Chinese translated map. He stepped outside the hotel. The map showed police stations scattered densely nearby. Beyond the central police headquarters, countless smaller local police boxes lined every street. Perfect. More targets mean more fun. Kong Ming folded the map and slipped it into his pocket, heading straight for central police headquarters. Many of the men who had tormented him in his past life had worked at this station. Most importantly, he clearly remembered the chief who ordered his death, Ikemoto Tansan, a 40-something man who, once the apocalypse hit, had built a survival shelter within the police station using stolen firearms. With no electronics to pass the time, his only hobby had been torturing captives, Chinese prisoners first, women then men. As a Chinese national, Kong Ming had endured endless torment. He suffered at the chief's hands for the man's amusement. Damn it, a man who does not avenge his grudges is no man at all. Having lived through months of suffering in that shelter, Kong Ming knew exactly where Ikemoto's private residence stood. Osaka Prefecture regulations granted station chiefs a private official residence. The home stood a short distance from headquarters. Ikemoto's home was a standalone luxury villa roughly 100 meters from the station, pre-fitted out as a bunker. All of this will be mine now. Kong Ming teleported instantly into the villa's ground floor. Polished off-white marble floors stretched beneath his feet. They led to a 4-meter-high living room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking an intricate, dry landscape rock garden. Dark brown leather sofas formed a half-circle facing a screen. Hanging prominently on the center of the side wall was a framed photo of Ikemoto and another government official, Hikoshi Hage. In the photo, the chief grinned widely. He sported a round beer belly and a crisp formal suit. Kong Ming wandered slowly through the villa, examining every detail. Every window was fitted with bulletproof glass. The glass was reinforced with manganese steel frames, resistant to standard explosives. The front entrance featured a 30-centimeter thick blast-proof steel door secured by iris locks. He was preparing for disaster long ago. Kong Ming let out a cold scoff. He pulled open a double-door freezer. Rows of premium beef lined the shelves. Caviar and imported fruit sat alongside, providing enough high-end food to feed a family of 3 for more than half a month. He sure knows how to live. He glanced at the dozen more identical freezers and sneered. Back in the shelter, he had considered moldy rice cakes a rare delicacy, while this man feasted daily. The chief viewed human life as less significant than insects. What surprised Kong Ming most was a hidden steel door tucked in the ground floor tea room. He pushed the heavy metal panel open, revealing a set of stairs leading deep underground. Kong Ming descended to find a 300-square-meter underground bunker. Its walls were reinforced rolled steel plate, fitted with an independent ventilation system and diesel generator. Separate rooms held piles of medical equipment, pharmaceuticals, and military rations. Energy bars and water purification tablets sat nearby, plus a shortwave radio communication device. A bank of surveillance monitors glowed in the corner, displaying live feeds of the villa. They showed the villa perimeter, the back alley of the police station, and public cameras at 3 nearby intersections. Treasure, pure treasure. Kong Ming's eyes lit up. This bunker was perfectly concealed, impenetrable, and fully stocked, the ideal survival base for the early days of the apocalypse. This shelter belongs to me from this moment forward. Kong Ming claimed the bunker as his own without hesitation. Just then, a notebook left on the coffee table caught his eye. The vast underground bunker showed almost no signs of habitation, making the lone notebook stand out starkly. Out of curiosity, Kong Ming picked it up and flipped it open, only to be utterly shocked by what he read inside. The book was filled with damning ledgers documenting human trafficking crimes committed by Tamasu. Among the victims were numerous Chinese women he had abducted. Nothing but beasts through and through. After spitting the insult, Kong Ming sauntered back down to the living room on the first floor, poured himself a glass of malt whiskey, and settled onto the sofa to wait for the man of the house to return. The courtyard gate creaked open, the tap of leather shoes growing louder as they drew near. A key twisted in the lock, and the heavy security door swung wide. A middle-aged man with a paunch, dressed in a Navy police uniform, stormed inside, grumbling furiously. This was none other than Tamasu, a face Kong Ming would recognize even if reduced to ashes. Bacallero. Worthless fools. We searched an entire day and didn't spot a single trace of him. Tamasu tugged loose his slack tie and roared into his phone as he marched toward the living room. Osaka Police Headquarters has hundreds of officers, yet we can't catch one petty thief? He dares kill patrol officers and show his face on surveillance cameras. He clearly holds us in utter contempt. Send more men out at once. Search every Chinese residence and Chinese restaurant in the city. Better to wrongfully detain 100 than let one suspect slip away. He cut himself short the second his eyes landed on the unfamiliar young man sitting on his sofa. Tamasu froze mid-step, his pupils flaring wide. His right hand flew to the holster at his waist, and he barked sharply. Who are you? How did you get in here? Don't move. Hands up. Kong Ming did not shift an inch on the sofa. He twirled his wine glass lightly between his fingers, a mocking smirk tugging at his lips. Chief Ibata, have you forgotten me so quickly? Of course you would. In our past life, you stood high above everyone, and I was nothing more than your plaything. Baka, what nonsensical drivel are you spouting? Tamasu seethed, equal parts shocked and enraged. He had never laid eyes on this youth before, yet the raw hatred burning in the young man's gaze sent a cold chill crawling up his spine. Tamasu's command of Mandarin was poor. Flustered and unable to parse Kong Ming's words, he pulled the trigger without hesitation. Die? Die right now. Kong Ming did not even bother activating his supernatural ability. Twice undergoing physical enhancement had pushed his physique far beyond ordinary humans. To his eyes, the bullet's trajectory moved in painfully slow motion. He tilted his head ever so slightly to dodge the shot, sneering. Is that all you've got? The sight shattered Tamasu's composure completely. His hand shook so badly, he could barely hold the trigger. You're the spatial ability user. You're a Chinaman. This time he spoke broken Mandarin. Tamasu instantly connected the youth to the serial theft case that had thrown all of Osaka into an uproar that very day. The culprit could appear and vanish without a trace, snatch objects out of thin air, and openly slay patrol officers. Every trait matched the young man perfectly. Your mouth is filthy. Kong Ming set down his wine glass and rose slowly to his feet. He advanced step by step, forcing Tamasu to stumble backward until his spine slammed hard against the wall, nowhere left to run. What do you want? I am chief of Osaka Central Police Station. Lay a finger on me, and Japanese law enforcement will hunt you to the ends of the earth. Tamasu attempted to leverage his rank to intimidate him. Kong Ming let out a scoff, leaning in close, his tone ice cold. Lay a finger on you? I'll do far worse than that. Every ounce of suffering you inflicted on me and my fellow Chinese in our past life, I will repay every bit, tenfold. The words had barely left his mouth when he unleashed his soul control ability in full force. A deafening roar exploded inside Tamasu's skull. His consciousness felt seized by an invisible giant hand. He thrashed violently, but could not break free no matter how hard he struggled. Look at me. Kong Ming's voice carried a hypnotic lilt. Relax your mind, and obey every command I give you. Soul control activated at maximum power. A tidal wave of mental force flooded Tamasu's mind, instantly crumbling his final mental defenses. Tamasu's struggles weakened steadily. The terror and defiance in his eyes faded, replaced by blank, vacant stupor until nothing remained but empty numbness. After several seconds, Kong Ming withdrew his gaze and straightened back up. Tamasu remained pressed against the wall, his eyes hollow, a marionette stripped of its soul. Kneel. Kong Ming spoke flatly. Tamasu dropped to his knees with a heavy thud without a moment's hesitation, utterly compliant. Kong Ming issued another order. Lift your head. Yes, master. Tamasu's voice dripped with abject subservience. This felt incredible, thrilling beyond words. Only now did Kong Ming grasp how terrifying the soul control ability truly was. He bent to retrieve the pistol Tamasu had dropped on the floor, twirling it once in his palm and curving his lips in a satisfied grin. Do you remember who I am? Ibata Tamasu replied blankly. I do not. Kong Ming chuckled, patting his rigid shoulder. That is fine. Starting today, your life belongs to me. Every thought you think, every action you take will follow my orders without question. I am your master. Do you understand? I understand, master. Ibata Tamasu nodded mechanically, his eyes empty. Kong Ming nodded in satisfaction. Soul control had succeeded. He deactivated his ability, walked over to the wine cabinet to refill his glass, then returned to the sofa and drawled out his question. Tell me, where is the Osaka Police Headquarters Armory? How many weapons are stored inside? The armory is on the second underground floor of Central Police Station. 2 blast-proof security doors stand at the entrance, requiring 2 separate keys to unlock simultaneously. Ibata Tamasu recited every detail like reciting a textbook, spilling the access codes, number of on-duty guards, and shift-change timelines without omission. Kong Ming mentally mapped out his plan as he listened. With Ibata Tamasu as his pawn, seizing a stockpile of weapons would be child's play. My second question, what do you know about the locations of garrison troops across Osaka Prefecture and the distribution of major military armories? Ibata Tamasu hesitated briefly. Some information lay outside his jurisdiction, but forced by the power of soul control, he laid bare everything he knew. The military garrison base is located at. There are 3 large-scale armories positioned at. 10 minutes later, Kong Ming possessed every scrap of intelligence he needed. He stared at the submissive man kneeling before him, his grin growing wider. With a police chief as his insider, he could turn Osaka upside down over the next few days. Listen closely, you will do exactly as I say next. Kong Ming stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the deepening night as he issued his instructions. Tomorrow morning, under the pretense of expanding search operations, reassign 2/3 of Central Police Station's officers and disperse them across every city block. Replace the armories on duty guards with your most loyal subordinates. He rattled off orders one after another, and Ibata Tamasu nodded mechanically, absorbing every command without pushback. Once he finished laying out all his plans, Kong Ming waved a hand dismissively. That will be all. Go sleep in the storage shed. Remember nothing that happened tonight. Report to the police station as normal tomorrow. As you command, master. Ibata Tamasu rose stiffly, shuffling toward the storage shed like a string-operated puppet. Silence settled back over the living room. Kong Ming stared out the window at the city's glowing streetlights, listening to ambulance sirens wailing past outside, his smile deepening. Little Japanese folk, the game has only just begun. Just then, the soft scrape of a key turning in the front door lock echoed, followed by a clear, youthful female voice. Father, I'm home. Kong Ming blinked in surprise. Ibata Tamasu had family. He had never heard a word of this even up until his death in their past life. Either she had perished early in the apocalypse, or the old fox had hidden her existence so deeply even his own subordinates knew nothing of her. The front door swung open after the voice faded. A breathtakingly beautiful young girl stepped inside, clutching a paper convenience store bag. She appeared roughly 20 years old, dressed in a sailor uniform that showcased long, fair, slender legs. Her figure was perfectly curved, her nose delicate and petite, her lips a natural soft pink. An air of pure, untainted innocence clung to every inch of her. Kong Ming's eyes lit up instantly. Absolute perfection, beyond stunning. Innocent features paired with a graceful figure. She embodied the peak of national beauty. Father, she called again, her voice soft and velvety. No reply came. Kong Ming stared, transfixed. He could not believe a vile old beast like Ibata Tamasu possessed such a gorgeous daughter. Ibata Sakurako tilted her head in confusion and stepped deeper inside, still clutching her bag. When she rounded the partition wall by the entryway and laid eyes on the sofa, her entire body locked rigid. A strange young man sat on her family's genuine leather sofa. He wore simple black casual wear, his frame tall and straight. But he was devastatingly handsome. That was her first unfiltered thought. Who are you? Ibata Sakurako stumbled half a step backward instinctively, forcing herself to stay calm despite her trembling voice. How did you get inside? Where's my father? Her body tensed like a frightened fawn, delicate and pitiful enough to tug at anyone's heartstrings. Kong Ming studied her with undisguised interest. No wonder Ibata Tamasu had hidden his daughter away all these years. Looks and a figure like hers would only spell disaster once the apocalypse arrived. But now she's mine for the taking. Amusement glinted in Kong Ming's eyes. Your father is upstairs. He spoke slowly, tapping the wine bottle lightly with one finger. He'll be down shortly. A jolt of dread shot through Sakurako's chest. The stranger's tone was far too calm, unnervingly so. He sat comfortably on her family's sofa, drinking her father's wine, not a trace of panic as an intruder. He moved as if he owned the house. She dared not wait around. She spun to bolt for the front door. Trying to run? Too late. Soul control. Kong Ming let out a cold laugh. Sakurako's fingertips had barely touched the doorknob when a sharp stabbing pain exploded inside her skull. Ugh! A muffled whimper escaped her. All strength drained from her body in an instant. She could not run, could not even twist her wrist. She crumpled limply to the floor, terrified tears flooding her eyes. Kong Ming grew fonder of the soul control ability by the second. A short burst followed by deactivation alone could shatter a target's consciousness. At that moment, the storage shed door creaked open. Ibata Temisu's stout figure appeared in the doorway. He walked over to Kong Ming and bowed slightly. "Master, what are your orders?" "Father." Ibata Sakurako was profile completely undumbfounded. Where was the stern, arrogant father she knew? How could he bow and scrape before a strange man like a lowly servant? "Dad, what's wrong with you?" Sakurako shouted loudly, yet Ibata Tamisu paid her no mind. The young girl dissolved into messy tears, her nose flushed bright red, which only made her porcelain skin glow whiter by contrast. Even overcome with terror, her exquisite facial features remained striking. Her fragile vulnerability only amplified her heart-wrenching charm. Kong Ming stood and strode slowly over to her side. He lifted her chin gently with the tip of his finger. Her skin was cool to the touch, smooth and silky, impossible to pull away from. "Ibata Sakurako, correct? Your father's precious, only daughter." Kong Ming was unsure how much Mandarin she understood. To his surprise, her grasp of the language was solid. At his words, her entire frame shuddered, her lips trembling as she replied in Mandarin. What do you want from me? If it is money you seek, our family has savings. And all our jewelry is stored upstairs." Kong Ming withdrew his hand and smiled faintly. "Money? I have no interest in it." The claim rang true. The supplies stockpiled inside his spatial ability would sustain him for lifetimes without end. "Then what do you want?" The young girl's Mandarin was impressively fluent. Kong Ming was pleased. "You." As the word left his lips, he activated soul control once more, eerie faint light flickering in his eyes. The second their gazes locked, his mental force surged into the girl's mind. Sakurako's mental resistance was even weaker than her father's. Against Kong Ming's power, it was like a mantis attempting to block a chariot. Within mere seconds, all defiance faded from her eyes. Her thrashing body stilled. Tears clung to her jaw, yet her gaze turned glassy and vacant, a delicate, lifeless doll. "Kneel," Kong Ming said flatly. Ibata Sakurako's knees buckled, and she sank obediently to the floor. "That's much better." Kong Ming chuckled lowly. He could not deny just how stunning Sakurako was. Strands of long hair fell to cover half her face, yet her small chin still radiated beauty. Kong Ming looked down at her from above. Father and daughter, one fat and greasy, the other pure and delicate, both bowed submissively like puppets on strings. The scene was absurd, bitterly ironic. He had only planned to seize control of Ibata Tamisu to manipulate the police station. Gaining his daughter as an unexpected bonus was a pleasant surprise. Now he had the translator he had long craved, plus a personal secretary all in one. "Listen carefully." Kong Ming fixed his gaze on the kneeling girl. "From today onward, you are my personal maid. You are forbidden to step outside without my permission, and you will not contact anyone else." "As you command, master." Sakurako's voice carried the same hollow stupor her father's had held initially. Kong Ming pondered the difference between Ibata Tamisu's state right after being controlled versus now, a theory forming in his mind. Soul control did not merely turn people into mindless puppets. It rewrote their core consciousness entirely. The vacant days was simply a side effect. As their minds adjusted to the new programming, the revelation thrilled him. This made the power far more entertaining to wield. "That will be all. Go prepare dinner. Sakurako, draw a bath for yourself, and come to the master bedroom to rest with me later." After issuing his orders, Kong Ming turned and headed straight for the master bedroom on the second floor. Sakurako still acted somewhat robotic, so intimate activities would wait for a while, but she would suffice to keep him company tonight. "As you wish, master." Upstairs in the master bedroom, Kong Ming checked the time. 8 o'clock in the evening. 4 hours remained until his planned operation. Kong Ming pulled up his system panel. Host, Kong Ming. Abilities, Spatial Storage LV.3 Proficiency, 10/400ths, Soul Control LV.1 Proficiency, 20/100. Physique, 30 Average Human Baseline. 8. Mental Power, 11 Baseline. 8. Spatial Capacity Utilized, 0.02. Using Soul Control twice today had earned him 20 proficiency points total. It appeared every person he fully controlled granted 10 proficiency points. He tapped his fingertips lightly against the edge of the bed, mulling things over. Soul Control LV.1 only allowed 3 targets under his sway, a pitifully low cap. Newly controlled targets also displayed an obvious vacant daze, which risked exposing his secret to outsiders. Yet observing Ibata Tamasu's behavior revealed that over time, puppets grew far more natural in their movements. Controlled targets retained all their original memories and habitual behaviors, bound only by an unbreakable core urge to obey their master. This discovery was far more valuable than simple thrall creation. Given enough adjustment time, the Ibata father and daughter could live and work like ordinary people, with no outsider able to spot a single abnormality. The power was absolutely perfect. Meanwhile, in China, the video Kong Ming had uploaded was blowing up online. At first, his account was brand new with 0 followers, so the video garnered barely any views after posting. But as clips titled "Ultraman Thief Clears Out an Entire Commercial Street Overnight" spread like wildfire, claiming the #1 trending spot on Douyin, the uproar spilled across platforms. Initially, everyone assumed the footage was edited special effects, until more surveillance recordings surfaced online. Netizens even dug up the nationwide wanted notice released by Japanese police. Only then did public opinion shift as people slowly accepted the events were genuine. The comments section exploded with activity. Holy hell! Spatial superpowers? This is exactly the aura revival apocalypse setting we read about online. Were those posts predicting the end of the world actually real? Ultraman looting Japan? This is the light giant settling scores with war criminals. Wait a second, has anyone noticed the thief only steals supplies? Medicine, food, daily necessities, he takes everything. He's clearly stockpiling for a disaster. A blogger based in Osaka posted a video 9 days ago saying the apocalypse was coming and told everyone to stock up on supplies. Could that be him? Public sentiment spread faster than anyone could predict. Kong Ming's video rocketed to viral fame overnight. It quickly drew the attention of national state security authorities. Technical teams traced the video's upload IP through the night, pinpointing its origin: Osaka, Japan. Registered account details: Kong Ming, male, 17 years old, native of Jiangxing. He had traveled to Japan after finishing the college entrance examination with a clean, simple identity background. What shocked senior officials most was an email Kong Ming had sent to the Ministry of State Security the previous day. The message detailed the full process of aura revival, zombie mutations, and superpower awakening. It even accurately predicted the exact timelines for global border closures. The email had been dismissed as a prank at the time, yet every claim was now proving true one by one. Inside a high-level conference room, multiple senior officials wore grave expressions. Establish contact with this Kong Ming immediately. Use every resource available to verify the authenticity of his claims. Notify emergency management departments across all provinces and cities to activate material protocols. We would rather stock supplies and use than be caught unprepared when disaster strikes. Suppress related public opinion externally to avoid mass panic. Launch internal mobilization preparations discreetly. Back in Japan, Kong Ming was finalizing his plan for tonight's operation. Knock knock. A knock echoed at the bedroom door, and Ibata Tamasu's voice carried through from outside. Master, dinner is ready. Enter. The second Kong Ming spoke, the door pushed open, and Ibata Tamasu stepped inside balancing a silver serving tray. The tray held A5 Wagyu steak, miso soup, and a small plate of sashimi, filling the air with a rich, inviting aroma. He bowed low to set the tray on the round side table, his head hanging subserviently. Master, please enjoy your meal at your leisure. I've placed the precinct's defense layout and full firearms depot documents inside this file bag. Kong Ming glanced up and spotted a black file bag resting beside the tray, just as the man had said. There are 2 keys to the firearms depot, Ibata Tamago reported mechanically. One's with me, and the other belongs to Deputy Chief Hasegawa. For access gates line the second basement floor. Beyond the physical keys, a dynamic passcode is required. It refreshes every hour, and only the shift captain knows the current code. 4 guards man the depot on 2 rotating shifts, with the handover at 2 a.m. That's when security is at its laxest. Kong Ming nodded, tapping the surveillance room on the map. Will Hasegawa be at the precinct tonight? He's on the night shift. His office is on the 3rd floor. Kong Ming folded the map and stowed it in his spatial storage, tilting his chin upward. Good. You may go now. Stand guard in the living room. Yes, master. Ibata Tamago bowed and backed out. the wooden door clicking shut softly behind him. Kong Ming picked up his knife and fork, eating the steak unhurriedly. The flavor was merely passable, though the ingredients were undeniably fresh. As he ate, he mentally mapped out his route for the night raid. With the intel IB Tamago had supplied, paired with his spatial teleportation and soul control superpowers, raiding a police station's firearms depot would be easier than grocery shopping. More importantly, the heist would stir up massive chaos, clearing the way for him to scavenge supplies freely afterward. Just then, the running water in the master bedroom's bathroom cut off. The frosted glass door slid open, and a warm, scented breeze washed over him. IB Sakura stepped out wrapped in a cream silk bathrobe, her long damp hair draped over her shoulders. The robe only reached mid-thigh, exposing her straight, slender calves and delicate ankles. Steam had flushed her cheeks pink, her lips full and rosy. "Master," she whispered. Her voice lacked the mechanical flatness from before, sending a faint tingle down his spine. Kong Ming set down his cutlery, raking his eyes over her figure, then beckoned her closer. "Come here." IB Sakura walked over obediently and stopped before him. The bathrobe's neckline gaped slightly, revealing delicate collarbones and a strip of pale white skin. Kong Ming reached out and tilted her chin upward with one finger. "Can you speak Mandarin?" Sakura's voice stayed soft, her gaze docile without a hint of resistance. "I majored in Mandarin at university. Daily conversation poses no trouble for me." Kong Ming nodded in satisfaction. He'd found his ideal personal secretary. He released her chin and gestured to the nearby chair. "Sit. I have a few questions. Answer them truthfully." "Yes, master." Sakura sat neatly, hands folded gently on her knees, her posture poised and proper. Kong Ming fired off a string of questions. Her age, university major, life skills, and even whether she'd ever been intimate with anyone. To his delight, the answer was no. What pleased him even more was the quality of her responses. Her logic was sharp, her speech fluid. Save for her slightly muted tone, she behaved indistinguishably from an ordinary human. It seemed Sakura had adapted to his soul control far faster than he'd anticipated. That meant she could move freely in public under the guise of a normal person to run errands and act as his proxy. "Can you give massages?" Kong Ming leaned back against his chair and asked casually. "I learned basic techniques." A faint smile crossed Kong Ming's face. "Come rub my shoulders, then." Sakura rose instantly and stepped behind him. Her slender fingers pressed into his shoulders with perfect, balanced pressure, her technique surprisingly professional. Kong Ming closed his eyes, savoring the massage while sorting through his upcoming plans. His top priority tonight was the Central Police Station's firearms depot, followed by seizing control of Deputy Chief Hasegawa. With Hasegawa under his thrall, he could plunder all of Osaka's supplies without resistance. As for what came next, Kong Ming's eyes turned cold. He recalled a JSDF armory located in Osaka, stocked not only with rifles, but heavy ordnance. If he could get his hands on that hardware, he'd return to China with far greater leverage. With that thought, he pulled out his phone and opened the video he'd uploaded earlier that day. To his surprise, the clip had passed review and already surpassed views. The comments section erupted in chaotic debate, filled with every manner of opinion. He hadn't expected much, nor did he know the Chinese government had already mobilized. From his perspective, every person he warned was one more soul prepared. Time ticked by, and the wall clock struck 11:50 p.m. Kong Ming opened his eyes and patted Sakura's hands. "That's enough." He stood and pulled the Ultraman costume out of his spatial storage, slipping it on. "I'm heading out." He fixed Sakura with a sharp gaze and issued his orders. "Stay locked inside this room. Do not step foot outside, no matter what noises you hear. If anyone calls, tell them your father has retired for the night, and they can reach him tomorrow." "Yes, master." Sakura nodded obediently. Without another word, Kong Ming left a spatial marker and teleported out of the master bedroom in an instant. Osaka Central Police Station remained blazing with lights deep into the night. 2 armed patrol officers stood posted at the main gate, while 360-degree surveillance cameras rotated nonstop. Security was far tighter than it had been during daylight hours. Clearly, the daytime shooting spree and robberies had put the force on high alert. Kong Ming materialized out of thin air in a blind spot against the backyard perimeter wall, a zone marked by IB Tamago as the optimal infiltration point. Pressing flat against the inner wall, he held his breath and listened to patrol footsteps. The station's nighttime security was rigorous. A patrol unit circled the backyard every 10 minutes, searchlights sweeping back and forth across the walls. Yet all these safeguards meant nothing to someone who wielded spatial teleportation. A flicker of thought, and his form vanished from his spot, reappearing inside the surveillance room a split second later. Only one duty officer manned the room, slouched in his chair scrolling through his phone. His screen displayed news comments about the Ultraman thief. Every few seconds, he grumbled a curse under his breath. Suddenly, light dimmed as a shadow fell over him. A cold bite to his neck was all he registered before crumpling. In his final moments, he caught a glimpse of the Ultraman figure looming over him. Kong Ming wiped blood off his dagger's blade, flying his fingers over the keyboard to shut down every surveillance feed. He then turned to the third floor. Teleportation rendered the depot's physical keys useless. Hasegawa was his real target. Upstairs in the third-floor office, Hasegawa flew into a rage over a stack of documents. Half his coffee cup spilled across the desk. Useless lot. You can't even catch a single thief. If no new leads surface by tomorrow, every last one of you will be reassigned to street patrol. He roared into his phone, only to spin around and spot Kong Ming standing out of nowhere. Shock froze him, and he slammed his palm against the desk, shooting to his feet. Who are you? How did you get in here? Guards. Guards. A mocking smirk tugged at Kong Ming's lips. Scream all you like, no one will hear. You're the spatial superhuman. Hasegawa's pupils blew wide as he instantly recalled the wanted circulars circulating throughout the police force that day. He fumbled for the service pistol holstered at his waist, his fingertips barely brushing the grip before a buzz exploded. Stay calm. Don't force me to kill you. Kong Ming unleashed his soul control power to its full extent. Hasegawa struggled far more weakly than Ibe Tamago had. Within 3 seconds, his resistance shattered completely, leaving him standing rigid. Remember this. From this moment forward, I am your master. All your future operations will coordinate with Ibe Tamago. Yes. Hasegawa bowed mechanically from the waist. Satisfied, Kong Ming issued further instructions. Wait here. Lead a team to the depot. With that, Kong Ming locked onto the depot's location and teleported away. The moment he appeared inside the firearms depot, he was stunned by the sight before him. Neatly lined weapon racks brimmed with service pistols, shotguns, and over 100 rifles. Mountainous stacks of ammunition crates stood beside them, alongside full sets of bulletproof vests, batons, and riot shields. Several crates of tear gas and flashbang grenades even sat tucked in the corner. Damn, there's far more stock here than I imagined. Kong Ming's eyes lit up. Without hesitation, he brushed a hand across the racks. His spatial ability activated, and an entire row of weapon racks vanished instantly, followed by ammunition crates, protective gear, and riot shields. Every usable item, not a single one left behind. In less than 10 minutes, the massive depot stood completely bare, not even a stray bullet casing remaining. Kong Ming pulled up his system panel to check his proficiency. His proficiency had jumped over 50 points, bringing him closer to leveling up. His task finished, he wasted no time and teleported straight back to the master bedroom of the Ibe family villa. Inside the bedroom, Ibe Sakura sat obediently. She stood and hurried to greet him the second he returned. Master, you're back. Kong Ming nodded, tossing his Ultraman helmet aside. I am. Pour me a glass of wine. Sakura bowed in compliance and turned toward the wine cabinet. Meanwhile, chaos had erupted at the Osaka Prefectural Police Headquarters. The conference room burned with late-night light, filled with every high-ranking officer of Osaka's police force, each wearing a face dark with dread. What? The Ultraman thief cleaned out the entire Central Station firearms depot. The police superintendent slammed his fist against the table so hard a water glass slid off and shattered on the floor. Hasegawa trembled as he delivered his report. Why yes, Superintendent. The entire underground depot has been stripped bare, and the surveillance duty officer was killed. The superintendent shook with unbridled fury. Baka. Incompetent fools, every last one of you. A thief ransacked a district, now this armory. Is his next move to blow up police headquarters? Launch a full investigation immediately. Mobilize every available officer to seal all entry and exit points across Osaka. Tear this city apart if you must. Find him. Chaos erupted throughout the conference room, every officer panicking. Only Hasegawa and Ibe Tamago remained eerily calm, a sight that made the other senior officers seethe with resentment. Yet none dared confront them. After all, the depot keys had been properly secured, and no procedural missteps could be pinned on either man. But a stolen weapons depot was no trivial matter. If those firearms flooded the population, Osaka's order would collapse entirely. No one present could fathom how a lone suspect had emptied an entire armory past layers of security. Hundreds of firearms, tens of thousands of rounds of ammunition. Even a truck would require multiple trips to haul it all away. Could he really be some kind of superhuman with extraordinary abilities? One officer muttered under his breath. Idiot. There are no unchangeable limitations. The superintendent snapped sharply, yet doubt gnawed at his own mind. Every piece of evidence pointed to a criminal unlike any ordinary human. Halfway across the sea, in the capital of Huagua, a meeting unfolded in the Ministry of State Security conference room. Several suited senior officials stared at a large screen displaying Kong Ming's uploaded video and an analytical report compiled by technical teams. We've confirmed the uploader's IP originates in Osaka, and the identity records match. This is Kong Ming. A technical staff member briefed the room. The prophecies he included in his earlier emails regarding global lockdowns have all aligned with real-world developments. The elder leading the meeting spoke in a grave, steady tone. Whether the revival of spiritual energy is genuine or not, we must prepare for the worst. Issue immediate orders. All provinces activate Level 1 material reserve protocols, ramping up stockpiles. All military theater commands enter Level 2 combat readiness. Border defense units will increase patrol frequency. At the community level, frame preparations as a new influenza campaign. Guide citizens to stock daily necessities and implement isolation protocols. Additionally, establish contact with this Kong Ming at once. He is stationed in Japan with first-hand intelligence. Secure a line of communication to gather more critical information. Understood. Orders rippled outward through every bureaucratic tier. The nation's vast state machinery swung into silent, orderly motion. No panic, no disorder. Every measure advanced in methodical, organized fashion. Back in the villa's master bedroom in Osaka, Kong Ming held his wine glass as his phone pinged. Who'd messaged me this late? Curious, he unlocked the device to find an unfamiliar text containing only one line. Fellow countrymen, this is National Emergency Management. We await your reply. He tapped his finger against the screen, choosing not to respond right away. The government has acted, just as I expected, Kong Ming murmured to himself, a faint warmth stirring in his chest. In this lifetime, with his nation standing as his backup, he would never witness total national collapse. He set his phone aside and glanced at Ibe Sakura standing nearby, curling a finger to beckon her forward. Come sleep beside me. We have major work to tackle tomorrow. The next morning, Osaka descended into full-blown uproar. News of the firearms depot heist could not be suppressed, spreading through every street and alley within hours. Paired with the earlier Ultraman thief robberies, mass panic swept through the city's population. Every major television station cut to emergency news broadcasts. The prefectural police held an impromptu press conference, announcing a citywide public security emergency. Street patrols tripled, with inspection checkpoints set up at every road junction. Armed officers stopped and questioned every pedestrian they encountered. Panic also gripped the Prime Minister's official residence. Japan's Prime Minister had flown over from Tokyo overnight, unleashing a furious tirade at Osaka's top police officials. A bunch of incompetent bureaucrats. You cannot apprehend a single criminal. And now you've lost an entire weapons depot. Do you intend to let Osaka spiral into total chaos? Prime Minister Takashige, his face livid, pointed directly at the police superintendent seated below him, his words sharp and unforgiving. I give you 48 hours to capture the culprit. If you fail, you will step down as superintendent. Hi. The superintendent bowed repeatedly, soaked in cold sweat. Upon leaving, he issued a ruthless order. Mobilize all police forces surrounding Osaka, coordinate with the JSDF Osaka garrison, and launch a citywide blanket search. Priority targets include Chinese residential districts, Chinese restaurants, and hotels and apartments. Better to falsely detain 1,000 than let one suspect slip away. Within hours, fear hung thick over every Osaka street. Squads of police and JSDF troops kicked down the doors of shops and private homes, conducting brutal searches, resorting to violence against anyone who resisted. Inspections targeting Chinese residents were especially harsh. Countless Chinese nationals were wrongfully detained and assaulted. The man behind all this chaos sat calmly in the Ibe villa's living room, leisurely eating a Wagyu breakfast Sakura had prepared for him. The television blared emergency news, the anchor delivering a grave announcement of the city-wide manhunt. Ibe Tamago sat at the lower end of the table, speaking respectfully. Master, the JSDF has deployed 2 squadrons to assist police with the citywide search. Hasegawa followed your orders and redirected the search focus toward the Yakuza factions in the Eastern District. Kong Ming cut a slice of beef and popped it into his mouth, a faint cool smile tugging at his lips. Excellent. Let them search to their heart's content. He paid the manhunt no mind whatsoever. With spatial teleportation at his disposal, not even a city-wide dragnet could catch him. The more chaos the Japanese police created, the easier his upcoming operations would become. Sakura, look up Osaka's largest logistics distribution hub for me. Kong Ming turned to the young woman beside him. Sakura instantly grabbed a tablet and tapped across its screen. Seconds later, she replied, Master, that would be the Kansai Logistics Central in Sakai City. It processes the majority of food, daily necessities, and medical supplies for the entire Kansai region, with over 100 warehouses on the premises. Kong Ming set down his cutlery and wiped his mouth. Perfect. That's our next target. All the shops he'd looted previously held trivial stockpiles. Now he was far more powerful. He would raid the core logistics warehouses to stockpile supplies on a massive scale. If he emptied this central hub, the goods stored in his spatial inventory would sustain 1,000 people for decades. IBE, head to the police station today. Find a way to redirect law enforcement away from the logistics park. Kong Ming issued his command. Yes, Master. IBE Tamago stood at once and bowed before exiting the room. Kong Ming turned back to Sakura. Stay here and guard the villa. Refuse all visitors. Yes, Master. Sakura nodded obediently. After finishing all his arrangements, Kong Ming changed into casual black clothes, pulled on a disposable mask, and teleported out of the villa in one spatial jump. Rather than heading straight for the logistics park, he wandered the city streets. He deliberately passed in front of multiple surveillance cameras before returning to a hotel to establish an alibi. By the time he finished planting false evidence, afternoon had arrived. Kong Ming remained in the hotel until dusk, then strode out openly, hailed a taxi, and headed straight for Sakai City. The streets were nearly deserted at this hour, only police cruisers and ambulances racing past non-stop, ideal cover for his heist. The logistics park spanned an enormous tract of land, lined with endless rows of warehouses and long queues of large cargo delivery trucks. With the entire city under lockdown, security at the park had been drastically reinforced, armed guards posted at every main gate. None of these measures posed the slightest obstacle to Kong Ming. He checked into a hotel near the logistics park after arriving in Sakai City. By 2 a.m., the entire logistics complex fell into dead silence. After changing into fresh clothes, Kong Ming cast spatial teleportation several times in a row, instantly reaching the deepest food warehouse zone of the logistics park. A gigantic warehouse stood before him, Grade 1 food reserve warehouse. This will be the first to go. He raised a palm to the rolling shutter door and unleashed his spatial ability at full power. Every grain sack, can, compressed biscuit, frozen food item, along with all shelves and pallets inside the warehouse vanished without a trace. Without pausing for a breath, he swept through warehouse after warehouse one after another. Grain oil depots, fresh cold storage vaults, beverage warehouses, daily chemical storage buildings, medical supply repositories. He left nothing behind wherever he passed. Kong Ming emptied over 100 warehouses in less than 2 hours. His spatial storage was piled sky-high with supplies, an absurdly comprehensive range of goods. His spatial ability proficiency skyrocketed non-stop. The familiar warm current washed over his entire body once more, a tingling itchiness spreading through his bones and muscles as his internal power surged to new heights. Host, Kong Ming. Superpowers, Spatial LV4 Proficiency 0/800, Soul Control LV1 Proficiency 60/100. Physique, 40 average human, 8. Mental power, 11 average human, 8. Spatial storage occupancy, 1/1000. His spatial warehouse doubled in capacity again, and his teleportation range boosted to 400 meters. A new skill, Spatial Barrier, unlocked. It could form an invisible spatial shield around his body to block incoming attacks. Not bad, another ace up my sleeve. Kong Ming clenched his fists, able to clearly feel the surging power coursing through his frame. He was confident his raw physical strength alone could punch straight through a concrete wall now. After a 2-minute rest, Kong Ming resumed clearing out the remaining warehouses. Just as he reached the medical supply depot, shrill police sirens blared from outside. Alert! The warehouses have been robbed. Seal off the entire park at once. Block every single exit. No one is allowed to leave. A warehouse clerk had gone inside to take inventory, only to find the entire facility completely empty. Shocked rigid with fright, he'd called the police. Every security guard in the park mobilized at once, swarms of police cruisers screaming into the logistics compound, sirens wailing nonstop. In under 10 minutes, the whole logistics park was surrounded with no room to slip through. The leading police inspector held a megaphone and roared. Listen up inside. You're completely surrounded. Come out and surrender immediately, or we'll storm the premises. Hearing the shouts echoing through the warehouse, Kong Ming couldn't help but laugh out loud. Surrounded? Did they truly believe this handful of officers could trap him? Far from panicking, he quickened his pace. He cleared out the final 3 medical supply warehouses in one go. Once finished, he clapped the dust off his hands, walked to the warehouse entrance, and called out, "Quit yelling. I've taken all the goods. You can head back now." The officers outside perked up instantly upon hearing his voice. "It's a Chinese man. He's still inside. Break in, Moo." A dozen armed police pried open the shutter cautiously and filed into the warehouse, single file. Yet the space was utterly vacant, not a single shadow in sight. "Where'd he go?" "We definitely heard his voice. Search every inch. He must be hiding somewhere." The group ransacked the empty warehouse top to bottom, even checking beneath the shelves, yet they found not a single strand of hair. Meanwhile, Kong Ming had already teleported silently. He reached the rooftop of the adjacent building, gazing down at the chaos unfolding below from his high vantage point. "Is this all you've got? You think you can catch me?" He watched with amused interest as more and more Japanese police swarmed the area beneath him. "Find him. Search every corner. Dig up the ground if you have to." Staring at the empty warehouse, the lead inspector's temple veins bulged with rage. He squeezed his megaphone so hard it warped out of shape. Dozens of armed officers scattered to comb every nook and cranny. They uncovered absolutely nothing. Right then, a sudden cry echoed from the far back of the warehouse. "Over here. We found a clue." Everyone sprinted toward the rear of the warehouse. Resting on the floor was a giant plastic Ultraman figurine, next to several scrawled characters. The text read, "I've claimed all your supplies. Thanks for the hospitality." The inspector rushed over, trembling with unbridled fury, nearly spitting blood. "Bacallero, this is humiliation. Blatant, unforgivable humiliation." He still could not wrap his head around how the intruder had vanished. Over 100 warehouses stripped bare, not a glimpse of the culprit, and the entire Kansai logistics hub thrown into total chaos. Word quickly reached the Osaka Prefectural Police Headquarters and the Prime Minister's official residence. The bald Prime Minister slammed his fist on the table. "Useless. All of you are utterly useless. A logistics park guarded by hundreds of officers, and you didn't even lay eyes on the suspect." Inside the Prime Minister's office, his face turned livid with rage. He swept a teacup off the desk, sending shards scattering. The National Police Agency director standing before him hung his head, too terrified to make a sound. In merely 2 days, the commercial district had been looted, police station armories emptied, and the core Kansai logistics hub stripped clean. Total damages soared to 200 billion yen. Worse still, the intruder moved like a ghost the entire time. Aside from a few surveillance clips of someone in an Ultraman suit and confirmation that he was likely Chinese, they knew nothing. "Prime Minister, the suspect almost certainly wields supernatural abilities," the director spoke up. "I recommend immediately deploying JSDF Special Forces to Osaka and enforcing a citywide curfew. Seal all entry and exit points. Better to wrongfully detain 1,000 innocent people than let him slip out." The Prime Minister slammed the table hard. "Approved. Issue the curfew order at once. No civilians permitted outdoors after 8 p.m. Mobilize all JSDF troops stationed around Osaka to assist police in carpet searches. Focus all investigations on Chinese residents living in Japan. Arrest anyone under suspicion on the spot." Orders were relayed, throwing Osaka into an immediate wartime state. Street patrols were replaced by fully armed JSDF soldiers. Armored vehicles trundling slowly down main roads as loudspeakers looped the curfew edict on repeat. Countless residential homes had their doors kicked open roughly. JSDF troops stormed inside with raised firearms. Anyone who resisted faced brutal beatings. Chinese residential enclaves bore the brunt of the crackdown. The doors and windows of countless Chinese-owned shops were smashed, goods strewn all over the ground. Anyone who dared to argue was labeled an accomplice of the suspect and dragged away. Chinese expats posted cries for help. Meanwhile, the mastermind behind all this chaos, Kong Ming, lounged on the leather sofa of the Ikegami villa, watching breaking news unfold on television. "Master, JSDF troops have entered the city, and search parties are heading straight for our location." Ikegami Sakurako reported softly. After a full day of mental conditioning from soul control, the vacant dullness in her expression had faded almost entirely, her speech and movements indistinguishable from a regular human's. Kong Ming popped a strawberry into his mouth and instructed her casually. "Tell Ikegami Tanshir to lead the search teams toward the Yakuza district in the east. Tip them off that gun trading is taking place there." "Understood, Master." Sakurako picked up the phone at once to relay the command to Ikegami Tanshir. After hanging up, She tapped her tablet and pulled up domestic Chinese news feeds. Master, there's movement back in Huagua too. The government just released a notice on novel influenza prevention, urging citizens to stockpile daily necessities. Grain and oil reserves are being rushed out. Kong Ming took the tablet, his fingertips sliding across the screen. On China's social media platforms, stockpiling supplies sat firmly atop the trending search list. In stark contrast to the panic and chaos gripping Japan, order prevailed across Huagua. Supermarkets bustled with crowds. Shoppers lined up to purchase goods in an orderly fashion, no stampedes, no vandalism. Community staff distributed prevention manuals door to door, educating residents on home isolation protocols. Round-the-clock emergency supply convoys shuttled non-stop to deliver provisions to every major city. Netizens flooded the comment sections. They chatted animatedly about the Osaka Ultraman. Holy hell, that guy was right. The government's telling everyone to stock up. Spiritual energy revival has to be real. Legendary Ultraman hero. Pulling off endless free shopping runs in Japan while warning our own people. His vision's unmatched. Japan's in complete disarray while we calmly stock supplies. Our country's truly reliable. Hope the hero stays safe over there. Don't let the Japanese catch him. We're waiting for his return as a national hero. Reading through the flood of comments, a warm glow spread. In his past life, he died alone in a foreign land, never once laying eyes on his motherland one last time. In this new life, he'd gained the power to avenge his past wrongs and protect his fellow countrymen. The feeling was utterly exhilarating. He grabbed his phone, opened an unrecognized text thread, and quickly typed out a message. During the spiritual energy revival, humans with weak physiques will mutate into zombies. Zombies spread infection via bodily fluids. Headshots will terminate them. Recommend constructing sealed underground shelters in advance. Stockpile grain and pharmaceuticals. Prioritize the protection of military and agricultural industries, and implement early city-wide lockdowns. Once sent, he closed the messaging app entirely. He'd shared everything he needed to. Kong Ming trusted the national authorities would draw their own conclusions from the warning. Setting the phone aside, he turned to the young maid beside him. Sakurako, locate all JSDF armories on Osaka's outskirts, and retrieve their defense deployment blueprints. Police station armories only hold small arms for self-defense. It's time to grab something far heavier. Sakurako's fingers flew across the tablet, quickly pulling up detailed intelligence files. Master, Osaka's largest JSDF armory sits on the eastern outskirts of Sakai City, less than 10 kilometers from the logistics park. It houses heavy machine guns, rocket launchers, high explosives, plus armored vehicles. Security is extremely tight, garrisoned by an entire JSDF company on 24-hour patrol, with infrared early warning systems covering the perimeter. Kong Ming tapped his fingertips lightly against the coffee table, a glint flashing in his eyes. A single company? Even a regiment couldn't trap me. I come and go as I please. I'm short on heavy weaponry anyway. Might as well take the whole stockpile. He stood and walked to the window, watching JSDF armored vehicles rumble past on the street, grinning widely. Tell Kigami Tansher I want full maps. I need full shift schedules and internal passage maps for the armory within 1 hour. Tonight, I'll deliver them another grand surprise. At your command, Master. Night deepened. Osaka's streets lay empty under the curfew, yet a suffocating tension hung thick over the city. Inside the villa's master bedroom, Kong Ming retrieved an assault rifle and chambered a round with practiced ease. Bald Prime Minister, JSDF troops, I've got another shock waiting for you. At 1 o'clock in the early morning, the JSDF armory was locked down. Under maximum alert, floodlights blazed bright across the compound. Machine gunners stood vigilant in watchtowers, a high-voltage electric fence circling the outer walls, with infrared alarm sensors posted every 50 meters. 3-layered defensive perimeters wrapped the entire base. No bird could slip past. Inside the base command center, Captain Sato stared intently at the surveillance screens, his brow furrowed tight. He'd scoffed at the upper command's alert warning of a potential superhuman intruder targeting the armory. He'd written off the entire police force as incompetent fools. He thought they were fabricating tales of supernatural powers to excuse their failure to catch a thief. Yet footage of the completely emptied logistics park warehouses playing on his monitors filled him with unease. He'd tripled patrol staff and raised the base's status to maximum alert. Captain, all systems normal, no anomalies detected. A patrol officer reported over the walkie-talkie. Sato exhaled in relief, ready to order them to maintain vigilance, when a dark blur suddenly flickered across one monitor screen. What the hell was that? He leaned in close. The frame went blank instantly, Not a shadow left in sight. Did my eyes play tricks on me? Sato rubbed his eyes and prepared to send patrols to investigate when a harsh static buzz cut through the air. Every single monitor in the command center went black. The infrared alarm system failed simultaneously. What's happening? System malfunction? Sato shot to his feet, shouting sharply. The communications operator fumbled frantically with the control console, cold sweat dripping down his forehead. Captain, all surveillance and alarm systems are completely offline. Useless fools. Send men to patrol the warehouse zones immediately. Sato grabbed his service pistol from his hip holster. Activate backup power, contact headquarters, and request emergency support at once. The words barely left his mouth when a figure clad in an Ultraman suit materialized. He appeared out of thin air inside the command center. Who are you? Sato's pupils dilated to pinpricks, raising his gun to fire without hesitation. His finger had barely brushed the trigger when searing, stabbing pain exploded in his skull, as if a steel needle had been driven straight into his consciousness. Ugh! Sato screamed, dropping his pistol to the floor as he collapsed into violent convulsions, clutching his head with both hands. Kong Ming strode casually through the command center, not sparing a single glance at the collapsed captain on the floor. In the blink of an eye, every communications device and control console in the room vanished, pulled into his spatial storage. With their lines of communication severed, the JSDF troops outside were blind and helpless. Finished cutting off their command, Kong Ming turned toward the weapons warehouses. Down the corridor, several patrolling JSDF soldiers heard the commotion and charged forward with raised firearms, opening fire the second they laid eyes on Kong Ming. Bang, bang, bang. Bullets whistled straight for his body. The projectiles simply clinked and bounced off an invisible transparent barrier surrounding him, clattering to the ground uselessly. What is that shield? The soldiers froze rigid, their faces drained of all color from terror. Kong Ming let out a cold sneer, flexing his mental power to shift his form, vanishing from his spot instantly. The next second, he appeared directly behind the patrol squad. He struck once, quick and lethal. None of the soldiers even managed to scream before they crumpled to the ground in pools of blood. Having neutralized the patrol, Kong Ming headed straight for the core weapons depot. The thick blast-proof steel doors meant nothing against his spatial ability. He laid a palm flat against the metal surface, and the entire door along with its frame vanished, revealing rows upon rows of gleaming armaments inside. Rows of heavy machine guns lined weapon racks. Crates stacked high like small hills were brimming with ammunition. Rocket launchers and high explosive charges were piled in the corners, while 2 armored vehicles and a mortar sat parked deeper within the vault. Damn, they've really stocked up heavy firepower. Kong Ming's eyes lit up, and he wasted no time. He unleashed his spatial ability at full power. Entire rows of heavy machine guns vanished in an instant, followed by ammo crates, rocket launchers, and explosive satchels. Every usable weapon and piece of ordnance was stripped clean, absorbed fully into his spatial storage. Even the 2 armored vehicles were dragged deep into the endless expanse of his spatial warehouse. He then swept through the adjacent ammo depots, equipment lockers, and logistics storage facilities. Bulletproof vests, military boots, compressed field rations, and medical first aid kits were cleared out without exception. In barely a dozen minutes, the entire massive armory had been emptied completely, not a single bullet left behind. Just then, heavy footsteps echoed from outside. Surround the building. He's definitely still inside. Sato had regained consciousness and led the remaining dozens of JSDF troops. They quickly circled the armory, sealing off every exit. He fought through the splitting agony in his skull, his gaze dark and murderous as he stared at the warehouse entrance, white-knuckling his handgun tight. He refused to believe that even with supernatural powers, the intruder could stand against dozens of assault rifles. Listen up inside. You are fully surrounded. Drop your weapons and surrender now, or we open fire. Sato roared through a megaphone. Silence echoed from within the warehouse. Not a single reply came. Fire. Hit everything. Sato waved his arm violently. Dozens of rifles discharged simultaneously, a hail of bullets tearing into the warehouse walls, sending plaster and concrete debris flying everywhere. Once the volley ended, Sato gestured for several soldiers to cautiously advance inward. Yet the second they stepped across the threshold, they froze stiff on the spot. See, Captain, there's no one inside. The armory's completely empty. What? Sato's face paled ashen gray. He sprinted inside, and despair crashed over him like ice water. The vast armory sat hollow. Every last weapon and vehicle vanished without a trace, not a single spent bullet casing left behind. The intruder had vanished into thin air, escaping a full encirclement of dozens of troops while hauling away an entire armory's worth of military hardware. Bakayero. Sato coughed up a mouthful of blood, his vision blurring to black as he crumpled forward unconscious. At that exact moment, Kong Ming teleported dozens of kilometers away, reappearing back inside the Ikigami villa. He pulled off the Ultraman helmet and tossed it carelessly onto the sofa, pouring himself a glass of whiskey. A rush of pure exhilaration surged through his heart. Kong Ming pulled up his system panel. Host, Kong Ming. Superpowers, Spatial LV4 Proficiency 128 hundredths. Soul Control LV1 Proficiency 80/100. Physique, 40 average human, 8. Mental Power, 11 average human, 8. Spatial Storage Occupancy, 1/1000th. This night's haul had been an incredible windfall. Not only had he seized a massive stockpile of heavy military arms, his soul control proficiency was only 20 points away from leveling up. Master, you've returned. Sakurako hurried over and took the empty wine glass from his hand. Words come in from Tokyo. The break-in at the armory has reached the Prime Minister's ears. Takashi's mouth flew into a towering rage. He's ordered the entire country to enter a state of emergency, all ports sealed shut, and the self-defense forces placed on full combat alert. Kong Ming nodded in satisfaction, a surge of exhilaration welling up inside him. Drowsiness washed over him right then. He lifted Sakurako up in one sweep and headed for the stairs. Sakurako looked up at him shyly, her voice timid. Master, will we play cards tonight? Kong Ming brushed a light kiss across her cheek. Not yet. Once we finish stockpiling supplies, I'll show you exactly what a real man can do. Sakurako buried her face against his chest, her tone soft and yielding. I'll obey whatever you say, master. That night, Kong Ming slept more soundly than he had in ages. A beautiful woman curled up in his arms, and an endless stockpile of supplies waited inside his spatial storage. When he woke, the afternoon sun was already high. He glanced at the sleeping Sakurako, then unlocked his phone. Domestic social media platforms were blowing up with buzz. Someone had leaked news of the armory heist, and netizens were losing their minds over it. Holy hell, Legend Ultraman is insane. He cleared out an entire self-defense forces armory. He's stripping the land of the Rising Sun bare of all their military hardware. This is so satisfying. They've acted so arrogant on the global stage, and now they can't even guard their own weapons depots. Keep it up, Ultraman. Clean out all their arms. I'd love to see what they fight off zombies with after this. Is this Legend a state-sponsored special agent? His power is utterly ridiculous. Speaking of which, our homeland's epidemic prevention and control measures keep getting stricter. My residential complex started registering all household supplies. It's clear the government's fully preparing. My sense of safety's through the roof. Beneath the flood of user comments were official media updates on national preparedness. Emergency stockpiles had been fully distributed across all regions. The military had launched combat readiness drills. Medical facilities had opened additional fever clinics. Every measure advanced in steady, orderly fashion. Compared to the chaos and pervasive fear gripping Japan, the calm stability back home filled people with reassurance. Kong Ming set his phone down and turned on the television. Every major Japanese news outlet was running his heists as front-page headlines, each more sensational than the last. Shocking. Sakai City Armory looted entirely. Suspect identified as mysterious superhuman. Nationwide crisis. Supernatural criminal strikes repeatedly. Police powerless to intervene. Prime Minister convenes Emergency Defense Council. May mobilize all self-defense troops for manhunt. Panic rippled through every street and neighborhood. At first, citizens only feared the unknown virus spreading across the country. But now even the SDF's heavily guarded armories had been emptied. The entire population of Japan spiraled into full-blown terror. If the military couldn't even secure its own firearms, what safety could ordinary civilians hope for? Supermarkets and convenience stores were ransacked once more. Bread and bottled water vanished off shelves in minutes, and prices tripled overnight. Hordes of civilians fled toward rural areas, convinced major cities were death traps and the countryside their only shot at survival. Inside the Prime Minister's official residence in Tokyo, the atmosphere in the conference room hung thick with oppressive tension. Takashi Mao sat at the head table, his face dark enough to drip with fury. The Minister of Defense, National Police Agency Chief, and Intelligence Department directors all stared at their laps, none daring to speak first. In just 3 short days, commercial districts, police station gun vaults, logistics hubs, and military armories. The intruder moved through each location as freely as wandering his own backyard, hauling away whatever he pleased. coming and going without restraint. Intelligence Division. Takashi Mao slammed his fist hard against the table and roared sharply. I demand you uncover this person's identity at once. Is he a spy dispatched from China? The head of intelligence forced himself to reply under the pressure. Prime Minister, we have screened every Chinese national entering the country and flagged over 100 suspects, but we hold no concrete evidence linking any of them to the crimes. The perpetrator wore a full face covering during every break-in. We have no way to pinpoint his true identity. Rage shook Takashi Mao's entire frame. Incompetence. All of you. If you cannot identify him, arrest every Chinese national residing in Japan. Interrogate them one by one. I refuse to believe we cannot dig him out. The Minister of Foreign Affairs cut in hastily. Prime Minister, we cannot do that. Global public opinion already tilts against us. Mass arrests of Chinese citizens will inevitably spark diplomatic conflict. Furthermore, China has ramped up military activity recently, placing its armed forces on level 2 combat readiness. A confrontation could break out if we act recklessly. Damn it, Takashi Mao shouted. Are we just supposed to let him run wild with impunity? As the cabinet officials argued back and forth, a secretary burst into the room in a panic, clutching a stack of documents. Prime Minister, terrible news. A classified document leaked online all of a sudden. It claims the government knew this was a zombie crisis. Not a viral outbreak, and covered the truth up the entire time. What? Takashi Mao shot to his feet and snatched the document out of the secretary's hands. One glance was all it took. His vision swam, and he nearly collapsed to the floor. As long as the situation remained containable, the disaster was labeled an unknown virus, a truth that could never reach the public. Full disclosure would trigger mass social panic and catastrophic economic collapse. How had top-secret records like this been leaked to the public? Find the source. Launch an immediate investigation to find who leaked these documents. Takashi Mao screamed hysterically, but it was far too late to fix the damage. The document spread to every major Japanese social platform within minutes, racking up over 1 million shares and igniting nationwide public outrage. Are you kidding me? Zombies. The government knew this all along. They knew disaster was coming and lied to us. Do they think we're fools? That explains the sudden border lockdown. This isn't a virus at all. The end of the world is here, and the government never cared if we live or die. Even now, all they care about is hunting down a thief. Instead of telling us the truth, they are hunting a thief. It's heartbreaking. Public anger exploded without restraint. Clashes between police and civilians erupted non-stop, with rioting, looting, vandalism, and arson breaking out across dozens of districts. Japan's already teetering social order teetered on the brink of total collapse. Looks like I've made quite the infamous name for myself. Kong Ming smirked with pride. He was mapping out his plan for the night when Ibe Tamago called. Master, the Prime Minister just held an emergency summit and ordered us to solve these heists within 3 days. Hashigawa followed your instructions and shifted all suspicion to local Yakuza factions. Right now, the self-defense forces are raiding gang hideouts across the prefecture. Kong Ming's grin widened. Excellent work. Keep muddying the waters. Make as much chaos as you possibly can. He paused, then added, also, locate Japan's National Grain Reserve warehouses in Osaka and gather full details on their defense deployments. Understood, Master. I will retrieve the information immediately. After hanging up, Kong Ming lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling. 7 days remained until the zombie apocalypse descended. He had stockpiles of supplies, firearms and ammunition, a secure shelter, and loyal pawns at his disposal, but it was still not enough. His next target, Japan's core national reserves. He intended to drive the country into crippling resource shortages. Long before the end of the world arrived, every hardship he'd endured in his past life would be repaid 1,000-fold, 10,000-fold. Outside the window, police sirens wailed without pause. Elsewhere, the National Police Agency chief endured a brutal dressing down. Standing rigid in his office without daring to lift his head under the glare of Takashi Mao, he listened. Useless fools. Another full day wasted, and you haven't caught even a glimpse of the criminal. From now on, the grain reserve warehouses must receive reinforced security. If another breach occurs, every single one of you will commit seppuku to atone for your failure. Takashi Mao slammed his palm against the desk, his chest heaving with rage. With international trade severed, the nation's grain reserves were its lifeline. If the stockpiles were emptied, half the country's population would starve once the apocalypse hit. Hi. We have tripled our guard forces at every reserve warehouse and deployed special assault teams. Nothing will slip past our defenses, I assure you. The police chief bowed repeatedly. Takashi Mao let out a cold scoff. Nothing will slip past? You said the exact same thing about the rifle depots and ammunition vaults before they were ransacked. He drew a deep breath to restrain his fury. Issue orders. All strategic facilities shift to maximum alert status. Open fire on any unauthorized intruders on site. Hi. Meanwhile, Kong Ming lay comfortably in bed watching a television drama. Master, lunch is ready. Sakurako pushed the door open carrying a food tray, setting it down beside the bed, and speaking softly to deliver her report. Father sent word that the grain reserve warehouse received a full SDF combat squadron as reinforcement. They are outfitted with heavy machine guns and armored vehicles. The special assault teams have also been redeployed to guard the facility. Kong Ming bit into a Wagyu beef sandwich and asked casually, "How much grain is stored inside that warehouse?" Sakurako glanced down at her phone, her breath soft against the air. This is the largest national grain reserve in the Kansai region. It holds 300,000 tons of rice, 400,000 tons of wheat, 100,000 tons of soybeans. There are also corn and other coarse grains. In addition, there are massive stockpiles of canned food, compressed rations, bottled water, and disaster relief supplies. Total strategic reserves amount to roughly 900,000 tons. She paused and added extra details. The underground vaults also house complete grain processing equipment and drying production lines. 900,000 tons. Kong Ming's eyes lit up. While the logistics park held vast commercial inventory, it could not compare to state-level reserves. With 900,000 tons of grain stored in his spatial storage, he could easily survive through the late apocalypse alone and sustain a survivor group of 1,000 people with plenty left over. Tell IB Tamago to infiltrate the grain warehouse. Retrieve full internal defense blueprints plus the soldier shift schedules. Kong Ming wiped his hands, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. Tonight, I will clear the entire facility out. At once, Master. By evening, IB Tamago sent over the data. The entire grain stockpile was housed underground. Only office buildings and sentry posts stood above ground. 2 blast-proof steel doors sealed the main entrance, guarded by 3 rotating shifts of troops. Independent surveillance cameras and infrared early warning systems operated deep within the facility, with all heavy SDF weaponry positioned at the surface entry points. That's all their security? Kong Ming let out a mocking huff after reading the defense layout. To anyone else, the warehouse was an impenetrable fortress, but for him, wielding spatial teleportation abilities, the doors might as well have been left wide open. 2 o'clock in the early morning. Silence hung heavy outside Osaka's Southern National Grain Reserve. Searchlights from sentry towers swept back and forth across the compound perimeter. High-voltage electric fencing lining the outer walls, the air thick with a menacing tension. In a shadowed corner beyond the perimeter fence, Kong Ming materialized out of thin air. Fully clad in an Ultraman costume, Kong Ming sneered. Infrared alarms. He waited 1 minute, then teleported straight into the warehouse's deepest storage levels in a split second. Vast mounds of grain stretched as far as the eye could see. Sacks of rice stacked floor to ceiling filled the vaults, the rich scent of raw rice thick in the air. Perfect haul, Kong Ming chuckled lowly. He pressed his palm flat against the grain stacks and unleashed his spatial power at full capacity. Entire rows, entire vaults of grain vanished instantly, shrinking away like receding tides before his eyes. Rice, flour, compressed biscuits, meat cans, every edible supply vanished without a single item left behind. He continued deeper into the warehouse as he collected supplies, quickly locating the workshop housing all grain processing machinery. Flour mills, industrial dryers, vacuum packaging machines, a complete production line, with spare parts neatly lined on storage racks. This will come in handy. I'll be able to process grain directly inside my spatial storage from now on. Without hesitation, he absorbed every piece of machinery and spare component into his storage space. I've struck gold. This haul is massive. Kong Ming's excitement surged, yet his hands never paused as he cleared out warehouse after warehouse. In under an hour, 3 massive grain vaults stood completely empty. Just as he prepared to enter the 4th vault, the facility's alarm system blared to life. Beep, beep, beep. Sharp emergency sirens split the quiet night. Vault 1 breach detected. All signal lost from Vault 2. Move out. Everyone converge on the storage vaults. Searchlights flooded the entire warehouse zone. Footsteps and the metallic clink of rifles being chambered echoed everywhere. Kong Ming raised an eyebrow. Their response was slightly faster than he'd anticipated. But that was the full extent of their advantage. Instead of hiding, He stood calmly in the vault doorway. Moments later, over a dozen self-defense forces soldiers charged forward with rifles raised. Upon spotting the dark figure in the doorway, they took immediate aim. "Identify yourself. Hands where we can see them." Kong Ming let out a quiet laugh and spoke in Mandarin. "I'm the one here to send you to your graves." Before the last word left his mouth, his figure vanished from sight. Where did he go? The soldiers panicked, spinning around to scan every corner wildly. The next instant, Kong Ming materialized at the rear of the troop. 2 gunshots rang out, felling 2 soldiers instantly. Splatters of blood sprayed across the concrete floor. The 2 men crumpled to the ground with muffled groans. "He's behind us. Open fire." The remaining soldiers whirled around and pulled their triggers. Rapid gunfire crackled through the air, yet every bullet stopped short half a meter in front of Kong Ming. The projectiles simply clattered uselessly to the ground. Impossible. The soldiers' eyes widened in utter disbelief. These standard military rifle rounds couldn't even pierce his aura? Kong Ming gave them no time to process their shock. He focused his mental energy and activated his soul control ability simultaneously. A tidal wave of psychic power washed over the 3 soldiers standing at the front of the group. Their bodies stiffened rigidly, their eyes turning hollow and vacant. "Turn around. Kill the others," Kong Ming ordered flatly. The 3 men immediately swiveled their rifles and opened fire on their fellow troops. Unanticipated crossfire mowed down multiple soldiers in seconds, screams ringing through the warehouse. "Damn it! Have you lost your minds?" The surviving soldiers were overcome with shock and rage, forced to dodge incoming bullets while fighting their brainwashed allies. Chaos erupted across the entire squad. Kong Ming stood off to the side, watching the carnage with cold indifference. This was the terrifying power of soul manipulation, forcing enemies to slaughter one another without lifting a single finger himself. Suddenly, a sharp gust of wind cut through the air from his left. Kong Ming dodged sideways. A man in full black tactical gear charged at him, a military dagger gripped tight in his hand, his gaze icy and unyielding. The man spoke in a low, grim tone. "Captain Sato, Special Assault Unit. Who exactly are you?" "Japan's elite special forces." Kong Ming arched an eyebrow, mildly entertained. "The man who's going to take your life." As soon as the words landed, Sato blurred forward, his dagger lunging straight for Kong Ming's throat, his movements lightning fast. He was the Self-Defense Force's top close-quarters combat specialist, fully confident no superhuman trickery could defeat him. But he was wrong. For rounds of physical enhancement had pushed Kong Ming's reflexes and strength far beyond human limitations. To Sato, his own lightning-quick strike looked blindingly fast, but to Kong Ming, it moved as slowly as a snail. He tilted his head barely an inch to evade the dagger. Then he threw a powerful punch forward. Boom. His fist connected solidly with Sato's chest. Sato felt as if a full truck had slammed into him. His body flew over 10 meters through the air before crashing heavily onto the concrete ground, coughing up mouthfuls of blood, barely clinging to life. Pathetic, Kong Ming brushed dust off his hands with clear disdain. In the distance, the rumble of armored vehicle engines drew closer. "Reinforcements are here." The few surviving soldiers cried out in relief. Kong Ming glanced upward to see 2 armored vehicles speeding toward the warehouse. Their roof-mounted heavy machine guns locked onto his position. Perfect timing. Instead of fear, a flicker of excitement flashed across Kong Ming's face. He pulled a rocket launcher fresh from his spatial storage and hoisted it onto his shoulder, aiming at the lead armored vehicle. "Let me treat you to a rocket strike." Boom. The rocket streaked forward, trailing fire, and struck the front of the tank dead center. A massive fireball erupted from the explosion, engulfing the vehicle in flames. The soldiers trapped inside didn't even have time to scream before burning to ash. The machine gunner aboard the second armored vehicle froze in terror, fumbling to swivel his weapon to fire. Kong Ming's second rocket was already airborne. Boom. Another deafening blast reduced the second armored vehicle to twisted scrap metal. Silence descended over the entire warehouse compound. The surviving soldiers stared at the wreckage before them, shaking uncontrollably, unable to hold their rifles steady. This was no human. Teleportation, impenetrable defenses, mind control, pulling rocket launchers out of thin air to destroy armored vehicles. He was a monster. Kong Ming swept his gaze over the terrified troops, uninterested in wasting more time fighting outmatched foes. He turned away to clear the remaining grain vaults. The Japanese soldiers collapsed to the ground trembling, too paralyzed with fear to give chase. 2 more hours passed. All 21 grain vaults inside the National Reserve were stripped completely bare. Even transport conveyor belts and grain testing equipment vanished into his storage space without a trace. Spatial storage LV.4 proficiency, 790/800. Staring at the proficiency meter, only 10 points away from leveling up, Kong Ming collected 10 nearby forklifts to fill the gap. A familiar warm current flooded his entire body, a dull aching spreading through his bones and muscles. His spatial storage doubled in size once more, and his maximum teleport range increased to 500 meters. A brand new skill unlocked, Spatial Blade. He could condense raw spatial energy into an edged blade capable of slicing through any material on Earth. Not bad. Kong Ming clenched his fists, feeling the surging new power coursing through his veins. Level 5 spatial abilities had granted him yet another powerful trump card. Kong Ming smiled, activated his spatial teleportation skill, and vanished without a trace from the reserve compound. By the time the Self-Defense Force's main reinforcement units arrived, all they found were corpses strewn across the ground, wrecked armored vehicles, and grain storehouses stripped completely bare. The commanding officer's legs buckled on the spot, and he nearly collapsed to the ground. It's all over. Everything's gone. When word reached the Prime Minister's official residence, the bald premier blacked out the second he finished listening to the report. Japan's entire upper echelon was seized by unprecedented panic. Meanwhile, back in China's National Emergency Response Command Center, a liaison immediately filed an urgent report after reading Kong Ming's latest message stating that Japan's national grain reserves had been emptied. Inside the command room, several senior officials exchanged glances, shocked plain to see. Just how many more tricks does this Kong Ming have up his sleeve? Regardless, he's diverted Japan's full attention and proven the combat potential of superhuman ability wielders. The elderly lead official said in a grave tone, "Issue orders to accelerate research into superpower awakening. Additionally, mandate nationwide physical fitness training for all citizens. Move up the evacuation operation. Ensure every Chinese national residing in Japan is safely repatriated." "Yes, sir." Everyone snapped a crisp military salute in unison. Dark night hung heavy outside the windows. The fates of the two nations had already quietly veered down entirely separate paths. News of the ransacked national grain reserves could not be contained forever. Early the next morning, Kong Ming was still fast asleep, holding Sakurako in his arms, when the story spread like wildfire. Social media erupted into chaos, and panic spread like an infectious plague. The grain reserves are gone? What are we supposed to eat? Even the self-defense forces couldn't stop him. Are we all doomed? I knew he was an Ultraman. Only a giant of light could pull this off. Quit rambling about Ultraman at a time like this. Delivery trucks are empty. Hurry to the supermarkets and stock up on rice before there's nothing left. Within a matter of hours, mass panic buying swept every corner of Japan. Supermarkets and convenience stores were overrun by desperate crowds. Their shelves were completely stripped clean. Brawls broke out over the last sacks of rice, with shouting and fights erupting on every street. To make matters worse, vicious biting incidents began being reported across every region. Hospitals overflowed with feverish, convulsive patients consumed by aggression. Doctors were helpless, forced to strap the afflicted to hospital beds. Authorities continued to claim the crisis stemmed from an unknown viral infection, yet anyone with a clear eye could see the situation was spiraling irreversibly out of control. Despair hung thick over Tokyo's prime minister's official residence. The bald premier sat at the head table, bloodshot eyes ringed with exhaustion, an ashtray piled high with cigarette butts sitting before him. Prime Minister, more than 300 abnormal infection cases have been recorded nationwide, spanning Osaka, Tokyo, and Yokohama, and the numbers are rising rapidly. Our national grain reserves now only hold enough food for 2 months. If we fail to find a solution, mass famine is inevitable. We still have 0 leads on that superhuman ability user. We truly have no countermeasures left. Aides hung their heads, sighing one after another. The premier slammed his fist hard against the table and roared, "No countermeasures? Then what do you propose I do? Surrender to that Chinese man?" Silence fell over the room. Every man present knew full well the enemy moved without a trace, impervious to firearms. Suppress all news. The premier ground his teeth and ordered, "Release a public statement claiming all infection cases are under control and food supplies remain abundant. Furthermore, deploy more troops to maintain public order. Crush any riots by force." Hi. Yet every man in the room knew you could not wrap a fire in paper forever. Without identifying the source of the mutation or developing a cure, the number of infected would only multiply faster and faster. Elsewhere, at the Abai Villa in Osaka, Kong Ming tested his newly unlocked spatial blade. He wove a thin layer of transparent spatial energy between his fingertips and flicked his wrist lightly toward the stone table beside him. Swish! Without a single sound, the half-meter-thick stone table was sliced cleanly in two, its cut surface smooth as polished glass. Decent destructive power. Kong Ming nodded in satisfaction. With the spatial blade, he wielded devastating close-quarters lethality even without firearms. Master, word arrived from the police station. A dozen more deranged patients were admitted to hospitals today, and several nurses were bitten, Ibai Sakurako said softly. My father asks if you wish to boost the villa's security detail. Kong Ming took the teacup and sipped slowly. No need. Tell him to hold his position and work with Hasegawa to keep the station's officers in line. 6 days remained until the full outbreak. The mutated humans emerging now were merely the first wave, those with the weakest constitutions, unable to withstand the transformation brought on by surging spiritual energy. The true living hell would arrive 7 days later, when spiritual energy exploded to catastrophic levels. He pulled out his phone, opened his dedicated contact line to China's authorities, and sent a message to the liaison. Spiritual energy will surge completely in 6 days, triggering mass mutations that create zombie-like creatures. These beings move fast, possess superhuman strength, and lack all thought. Their bites spread the mutation, and only a headshot can kill them. Order citizens to self-isolate in individual sealed rooms in advance, and stockpile large quantities of incendiary bombs. The reply came almost instantly. Message received. The first evacuation flights have departed for Osaka. Would you like to return home with us? We can arrange a private aircraft for you. Kong Ming stared at the text and fell silent for several seconds. Return to China? Part of him ached to go. His homeland was secure, backed by the full power of the state. Life there would be far safer than trapped in Japan. But he had yet to avenge the horrors of his past life. He intended to witness this nation's collapse with his own eyes, to watch this vicious race fade from existence completely. Beyond that, Japan still held vast stockpiles of strategic materials and military equipment. He could loot multiple halls before the apocalypse fully descended. Kong Ming typed a reply. I cannot leave yet. I have unfinished business here. Just bring one item back for me during the evacuation. He planned to send an object marked with his spatial signature to China. Once the marker arrived, he could teleport home in the blink of an eye whenever he pleased, utterly convenient. Understood. Please take extreme care. Contact us at once if you face any danger. Setting his phone aside, Kong Ming lifted his gaze to the distant sky. He spotted the faint silhouette of passenger jets streaking across the horizon. The state had not abandoned a single one of its citizens. The feeling warmed his chest deeply. He dropped his gaze, his expression hardening once more. It was time to collect some overdue interest. Sakurako, get ready. We're heading out. Sakurako tilted her head in confusion. Where are we going, master? A cold smirk tugged at Kong Ming's lips. The Yasukuni Shrine. Since he was in Japan, he could hardly skip the visit. He had seen countless images of the shrine online in his past life. Now he would witness it firsthand, and stir up a little chaos while he was at it. By afternoon, Kong Ming and Sakurako drove into Tokyo. Ibai's father had pre-arranged forged identification papers, granting them unimpeded passage all the way into the city. Only a handful of tourists lingered at the shrine. The recent nationwide unrest had kept most citizens indoors. Masked, Kong Ming wandered the grounds slowly, his face devoid of emotion. The shrine enshrined war criminals whose hands were soaked in the blood of countless Chinese civilians. A pack of beasts, unworthy of any worship. Kong Ming snorted coldly. When no one was watching, he flicked a tiny sliver of spatial blade from his fingertips. Swish! The steel reinforcements inside the shrine hall's support pillar were severed without a sound. He repeated the strike on several more load-bearing pillars. Evacuation operations were still underway, so blowing the entire complex sky-high was premature. But weakening the structure into a dangerous condemned building, triggering partial collapse, would humiliate Japan's ruling class thoroughly. Once finished, he cleared out every supply stockpile on the shrine grounds, not even sparing the souvenir shop. All the merchandise had been acquired through exploitation and theft anyway. There was no sense leaving it behind. Less than 30 minutes after he and Sakurako departed, a deafening crash echoed as half the shrine's side hall caved in. Tourists screamed and scattered in terror. When the news hit social media, Chinese netizens erupted in celebration. It deserved to collapse. It should have fallen ages ago. Ultraman did it for sure. The giant of light punishing war criminals. Brilliant work. If Ultraman topples the main hall too, I'll build a shrine dedicated to him. Japanese netizens, by contrast, wailed in outrage, hurling threats to capture and dismember the culprit. But their rage amounted to nothing more than empty words. By this point, Kong Ming had already returned to Osaka. The moment he stepped through the villa gates, Ibai's father rushed to greet him, his face ashen with dread. "Master, disaster has struck. Hundreds of hospitalized infected patients broke free from their restraints and attacked doctors and nurses. Every hospital in the city is out of control. The self-defense forces have been dispatched to suppress the chaos." Kong Ming nodded, unfazed. What was coming had always been inevitable. He walked to the window and watched panicked crowds sprint through distant streets, faint screams drifting on the wind, his features utterly blank. In his past life, he had been one of those terrified refugees, living in constant fear for his life. Now he stood safely inside a fortified villa, watching the nation crumble bit by bit with cold detachment. Kong Ming issued a quiet order. "Inform Hasegawa to pull back. Tell him to pull all police officers back to the station, hold the perimeter, and avoid intervening in the streets. Additionally, deploy officers to set up a 1-kilometer cordon around the station, mark out a secure zone, and prepare to build a civilian shelter." "At once, master." Ibai's father hurried off to execute the orders. Sakurako stood behind Kong Ming, trembling slightly at the sight of the rampant chaos outside, and subconsciously leaned closer to him. "Master, will we be safe?" Kong Ming lifted her chin gently, brushing his thumb across her skin. "With me here, nothing will harm you." Sakurako stared into his eyes, a faint blush rising across her cheeks, and nodded obediently. "Yes." Kong Ming dropped his hand and turned back to the window. Night fell fast, and the screams echoing from the streets grew more frequent and frantic by the minute. Back in China, the scene could not have been more different. Every residential community had completed supply registration. Hospitals built dedicated isolation wards, and military epidemic prevention units deployed to every major city, ensuring total order and defensive readiness. Daily news broadcasts covered epidemic control progress, with specialists sharing safety guidance. Though tense, the public remained calm and orderly. Every household had stockpiled grain and medicine, following official guidelines to self-quarantine in separate rooms. Two nations faced the same existential crisis, yet their paths diverged wildly. One dissolved into unregulated chaos, retreating at every turn. The other operated with rigid order, handling the threat with composure. Kong Ming unlocked his phone and read the notification that China's full national epidemic prevention network was fully operational. A faint smile tugged at his mouth. The night sky glowed an eerie blood red. By afternoon, isolated incidents of infected patients breaking free had been reported from scattered hospitals. By midnight, the city's entire emergency medical system had collapsed completely. Siren wails and human screams blended into a grim funeral dirge. Multiple surveillance feeds from the villa's monitors displayed live footage from Osaka's major hospitals simultaneously. Once clean, solemn ward hallways lay in complete ruin. Patients who had torn free of their restraints charged at fleeing medical staff with feral snarls, blood splattering starkly across white hospital walls in a horrifying display. "Master, Osaka Municipal General Hospital and Kansai Medical University Affiliated Hospital are both fully overrun," Ibai Sakurako said from behind him. "The self-defense forces sent 2 squads to contain the outbreaks. They will almost certainly resort to firearms." Kong Ming swirled whiskey in his glass and took a slow sip, his tone flat and indifferent. Predictable. Spiritual energy concentrations rise by the day, and the first wave of vulnerable humans were bound to mutate sooner or later. The self-defense force's small contingents cannot hold hospital entrances without lethal firepower. Yet once they open fire, there will be no way to hide the truth of the zombies from the public. Memories of his past life burned vividly in his mind. Hospitals were always the first living hells to fall when the apocalypse hit. Feverish patients and wounded civilians packed tight together. Once saturated with spiritual energy, hordes mutated all at once, turning medical facilities into zombie breeding grounds. "What are our orders, master?" Ibai's father bowed deeply beside him, his tone reverent. Kong Ming set down his glass and tapped his fingers lightly against the tabletop. He already possessed ample grain, weapons, and daily supplies. Only large-scale stockpiles of medical resources remained missing. In his past life, countless people had perished not from zombie bites, but trivial wound infections or ordinary fevers. Medication and medical equipment would prove far more valuable than gold once the apocalypse fully arrived. "Tell Hasegawa to recall every remaining police officer to guard the station and surrounding blocks. forbid them from venturing out to die pointless deaths. Kong Ming stood, a sharp glint flashing in his eyes. The hospital's medical supplies shouldn't be left for the zombies to waste. Half an hour later, a figure clad in an Ultraman mask materialized out of thin air behind Osaka Municipal General Hospital. The air reeked of a cloying mix of fresh blood and disinfectant, with unhinged snarls and cries echoing non-stop from inside the hospital building. It was a living hell on Earth. His teleport skills cooldown expired, and Kong Ming focused his mind, vanishing instantly to reappear on the hospital ward's pharmacy floor. The entire pharmacy was ransacked, stripped apart by panicking staff and patients, loose pills scattered across the floor. Kong Ming let out a scoff. These paltry scraps were beneath his notice. His true target lay underground, the hospital's central pharmaceutical vault and equipment warehouse. He descended the stairwell, and the second he rounded a corner, 3 blood-soaked zombies lunged at him with feral roars. Their skin was ashen gray, their eyes clouded and milky, their fingernails grotesquely elongated, blood frothing from their jaws. Perfect timing. Kong Ming's gaze turned cold. He conjured a translucent spatial blade between his fingers and swept his wrist once. Swish! All 3 creatures were sliced cleanly in half at the waist in an instant, their blood splattering across the walls to fill the air with a putrid stench. Slightly more durable than ordinary humans, yet nothing remarkable. Kong Ming retracted his energy, satisfied with the spatial blade's power. These early-stage zombies moved sluggishly with weak defenses and no evolved special abilities. Cutting them down was as simple as chopping vegetables for him now. He pushed open the blast-proof metal door to the underground pharmaceutical vault, revealing endless rows of medicine shelves stretching before him. Antibiotics, antiviral drugs, anesthetics, surgical disposable supplies, plasma bags. Every category was neatly stacked, filling a vault the size of half a football field. Precious goods. Kong Ming's eyes lit up. Without hesitation, he pressed his palm to the shelves and unleashed his spatial ability at full power. Entire rows and columns of medicine, shelves and all, vanished into his storage space, the stockpiles shrinking rapidly as if swept away by a receding tide. His mood lifted considerably. Once all pharmaceuticals were secured, he moved to the adjacent equipment warehouse. Ventilators, patient monitors, operating tables, CT scanners, MRI machines. Complete sets of hospital hardware lined the warehouse, with full spare component kits for every device. Kong Ming did not hold back, absorbing all the machinery and spare parts wholesale into his spatial storage. With this haul, he could fully equip a large-scale shelter hospital whenever he chose. He was about to teleport to the next hospital when heavy footsteps and rapid gunfire echoed from outside the warehouse. Someone's inside. Block the exit now. A self-defense forces squad of roughly 20 soldiers advanced cautiously, rifles fitted with silencers raised at the ready. They had detected unusual activity in the vault and assumed looters were taking advantage of the chaos. A mocking grin curved Kong Ming's lips. Free proficiency points handed to him on a silver platter. He would not turn them down. Instead of hiding, he hauled the warehouse door wide open and stepped into full view of the squad. It's the Ultraman thief. The squad leader's eyes blew wide, and he shouted in shock. Word of the emptied national grain reserves had spread throughout the self-defense forces. The masked figure standing before them was the same monster who had stripped military arsenals bare. Open fire. Fire at will. The squad leader screamed his order, and 20 rifles erupted in simultaneous gunfire, a hail of bullets hurtling toward Kong Ming. Clink, clink, clang. Every bullet slammed into an invisible spatial barrier surrounding his body, bouncing harmlessly to the concrete floor. Is that all you've got? Kong Ming let out a cold laugh and activated his soul manipulation ability to its maximum output. A tidal wave of mental power crashed into the 3 frontline soldiers, shattering their mental defenses in an instant. Turn around. Kill your comrades. The icy command burrowed into their minds. The 3 soldiers' eyes glazed over with empty obedience, and they whirled their rifles around to aim at the men beside them. Rat-a-tat-tat. Unanticipated crossfire erupted in the narrow corridor, screams ringing out non-stop. The remaining soldiers reeled between shock and rage, dodging stray bullets and shouting in disbelief as chaos engulfed the squad. Kong Ming leaned lazily against the doorframe, watching the carnage with cold detachment. At that moment, a cool stream of mental energy surged from the depths of his consciousness, clearing his mind completely. Kong Ming realized his soul manipulation power had doubled in effectiveness. Group soul control unlocked. Maximum simultaneous controlled targets raised to 6, total controllable subjects capped at 21. A flicker of delight crossed Kong Ming's face. From now on, any small military unit he encountered could be forced into civil war with a single mass mind control cast. The gunfight in the corridor neared its bloody end. The remaining self-defense soldiers lay dead or wounded on the ground, and the three mind-controlled troopers collapsed after being hit by stray bullets in the melee. Kong Ming saw no need to deliver finishing blows. He activated teleportation and vanished, heading straight for the next hospital to continue his looting. As he continued his rampant looting spree, the conference room at the Prime Minister's official residence in Tokyo stayed brightly lit through the entire night. Baka. All 12 major hospitals in Osaka have fallen out of control. Self-defense forces casualties exceed 300. Hikoshi Hage slammed his palm hard against the table, his face turning livid with rage. He had originally thought it was merely a small-scale viral outbreak that could be suppressed with minimal force. He never expected the entire medical system across Kansai to collapse overnight. Prime Minister, the mutated humans are extremely aggressive. Their bites transmit the virus, and ordinary bullets struggle to kill them instantly. The Minister of Defense forced himself to deliver the report. We have issued orders to lock down all hospitals, barring all entry and exit. Hikoshi Hage shot abruptly to his feet, shouting directly in the minister's face. Lockdown? What good will a lockdown do? Our food reserves are gone, our arms stockpiles are gone, and now the hospitals are lost too. In a few more days, will we not even be able to hold Tokyo? Dead silence swept over the room. No one dared utter a word. None of them could fathom how a simple, unknown virus had spiraled into this catastrophe. Worse still, that mysterious Chinese superhuman had seized the chaos to plunder everywhere. Yet they could not catch so much as a glimpse of him. Investigate. Find out exactly where that superhuman is right now. Hikoshi Hage gasped for breath. Mobilize every available unit to guard the fuel depots and military weapons bases. We can survive without food for a time, but if we lose fuel, we are finished. We are truly finished if we lose our arms manufacturing capacity. Hi. Everyone chorused their acknowledgement in unison. Meanwhile, thousands of kilometers away in China's capital, the National Emergency Command Center operated in perfect order. Report. 92% of the country's medical facilities have completed isolation renovations. All designated hospitals have independent infection wards, and full stocks of protective supplies are in place. Report. The military's first batch of flamethrowers and incendiary bombs has been distributed to garrison troops in all major cities. Troops are undergoing targeted zombie elimination training as we speak. Report. All initial mutant zombies have been neutralized, totaling 2,370 individuals. No secondary transmissions occurred. Each report was crisp and clear. The elderly leader presiding over the room nodded faintly. His gaze was fixed on the large screen, displaying a message sent by Kong Ming. Early-stage zombies can be killed via headshots. Hospitals are high-risk zones. Advanced containment is recommended. The elder sighed softly. This Kong Ming has once again braved danger to scout threats ahead of us. Send him a reply. Domestic preparations are proceeding smoothly, and he must prioritize his own safety above all else. Yes, sir. On another side of the command center, a large screen broadcast live news footage of Japan's overrun hospitals. The chaotic streets and fleeing panicking civilians in the footage stood in stark contrast to China's orderly epidemic prevention measures. Both nations face the same crisis, yet the divide between us is staggering. One staff member murmured quietly. The elder's eyes held profound depth as he spoke slowly. This is not a gap in crisis response. It is a gap in governing systems. Notify all departments to remain fully alert and accelerate construction of underground survival shelters. We must complete all thorough preparations before the apocalypse arrives. Chaos in Osaka only intensified by the minute. Abandoned vehicles and splattered bloodstains littered every street corner. Authorities issued an emergency city-wide lockdown, ordering all residents to stay indoors and avoid venturing outside. This played perfectly into Kong Ming's hands. In just one night, he had ransacked nearly every large supply storage facility across Osaka. He returned to the villa and rested briefly. By then, Sakurako had sorted all the information he requested. Master, Kansai's largest fuel reserve depot is in southern Sakai City, not far from the previous arms warehouse. Sakurako tapped a spot on the map, her voice soft and gentle. It holds 4 million kiloliters of gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel, alongside supporting oil pipelines and oil refining equipment. A full self-defense forces battalion is stationed there, reinforced by 2 special operations teams. Heavy machine guns and mortars are deployed, making its defenses tighter than the grain depots. In addition, there is a military component manufacturing plant on Osaka's outskirts. It produces rifle ammunition and grenades exclusively, serving as Kansai's sole light weapons production line. Word came from Superintendent Ikemoto. Hikoshi Hage personally ordered 200 self-defense forces troops to garrison the factory today. They will execute round-the-clock patrols. Kong Ming tapped the table lightly with his fingers after listening. Fuel and weapons production lines were invaluable assets. In the apocalypse, vehicles, generators, and armored vehicles all relied on fuel. Without it, all machinery became worthless scrap metal. A weapons production line, meanwhile, represented a sustainable source of firepower. Bullets would eventually run out, but a factory could churn out endless ammunition. Hikoshi Hage is not completely foolish. He knows to guard his remaining assets closely. Kong Ming let out a mocking snort. In his past life, fuel reserves had been seized and divided by countless factions, with men killing one another over a single barrel of oil. It was far better to claim all these resources for himself in advance. Sakurako looked at him with clear worry. "Master, will you be in danger?" Kong Ming lifted a hand to ruffle her hair, his tone casual and relaxed. "Danger? To anyone else, this is an inescapable trap. For me, it is no different from strolling through my private garden." A plan had already formed in his mind. A head-on assault would work, yet it would lack entertainment value. Since they were determined to hold their ground, he would play along with them. Send word to Ikemoto Tansan. Have him relay false intelligence to the Self-Defense Forces Command. A mischievous smirk tugged at Kong Ming's lips. Tell them we received an informant tip that I plan to raid the ammunition depot in northern Osaka tonight. Order them to redeploy the main force guarding the fuel depot to reinforce that location. As you wish, Master. Sakurako immediately left to deliver the command. Kong Ming stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the distant streets. After his night-long looting spree, all medical resources from Osaka's 12 major hospitals had been stored within his spatial warehouse. Everything from cold medicine and iodophor to surgical operating equipment and ICU monitoring machines filled the space. This hall was enough to supply a survival shelter holding 10,000 people for years on end. More importantly, his soul control ability had risen to level 2. Mass soul control could now subjugate up to 10 people simultaneously, and his mental power had doubled entirely. From this point forward, facing a self-defense forces squad would not even require him to fire a single shot. A single thought would force them to turn their weapons on one another. The game is about to level up. In the past, he had lacked overwhelming power and feared exposure. Only 5 days remained until the full zombie outbreak. Time was running short, and with both his superpowers upgraded, Kong Ming intended to seize resources outright without subtlety. 2 p.m., Sakai City Fuel Reserve Depot. High-voltage electric fences surrounding the perimeter crackled with electricity. Heavy machine guns mounted on sentry towers covered every road access point, and patrol units circled the depot grounds every 5 minutes. The defensive density far surpassed that of the grain depots he had raided earlier. Inside the command center, Battalion Commander Yamamoto stared rigidly at a wall of surveillance monitors. His expression was taut with tension. Headquarters had just transmitted an urgent alert warning that the superhuman might attack the northern ammunition depot that night, ordering him to send his main troops to provide backup. After long hesitation, Yamamoto only dispatched half his men. This fuel depot was the lifeblood of Kansai. If the tip was a trap to lure his defenders away, he would bear full responsibility for any losses. Commander, Northern Patrol Unit reports, all clear. Commander, Eastern Perimeter shows no anomalies. Continuous status reports rolled in, easing Yamamoto's nerves slightly. Perhaps the intelligence was false. No matter how reckless the superhuman was, he could never breach a depot guarded by heavy military forces. In that instant, the surveillance screens fizzled with static and cut to black all at once. What's happening? Yamamoto shot to his feet in alarm. A communications soldier fumbled frantically with the control console, sweat pouring down his face. Our reporting, Commander. All surveillance systems have failed. The infrared early warning network is offline too. A cold dread shot straight from Yamamoto's feet to the top of his head. We've been duped. Sound the alarm immediately. All personnel to battle stations. The second his roar faded, the command center's metal door exploded inward with a thunderous bang. A figure clad in an Ultraman suit stepped slowly into the room, his tone laced with mockery. Quick reflexes, but unfortunately, you're already too late. It's you. Yamamoto's pupils shrank to pinpricks, his hand flying to draw the sidearm holstered at his waist. Kong Ming's gaze turned icy, and he activated his soul control ability instantly. Level 2 soul control boasted twice the mental power of its previous iteration. Ordinary humans like Yamamoto possessed zero capacity to resist. His eyes glazed over, frozen rigid in place. Issue orders for all patrol units to assemble at the Eastern Depot gate. Tell them tracks were spotted there. Kong Ming ordered flatly. Yes. Yamamoto mechanically picked up the radio and relayed the command word for word. Though confused by the sudden order, all troops stationed across the depot abandoned their posts and rushed toward the eastern gate. Only a handful of sentries remained scattered across the otherwise empty depot grounds. Kong Ming nodded in satisfaction, wasting no more time as he turned and headed straight for the tank storage zone. Millions of oil storage tanks stood neatly lined, filled with refined fuel products. He showed no mercy, unleashing his spatial power to its full capacity. One tank after another vanished out of thin air, transported deep into his spatial warehouse. 4 million kiloliters of fuel sounded like an enormous stockpile, yet within his vast storage space, it occupied merely a single section. Once all fuel was secured, Kong Ming moved on to the equipment yard. Oil pumps, refinery machinery, testing instruments, maintenance tools, every piece of hardware was taken without exception. By the time the troops stationed at the eastern gate realized something was amiss and rushed back en masse, they arrived to witness an incomprehensible sight. The tank storage zone stood completely empty, not a single tank left behind. Only smooth, bare concrete flooring remained, as if nothing had ever been stored there. Where are the tanks? Where's the 4 million kiloliters of fuel? The lead deputy captain screamed in a frenzy. No soldier could offer a reply. Just then, Kong Ming's voice echoed down from above. I've claimed all your goods. Thank you for this generous gift. The troops looked upward to spot the Ultraman figure standing atop the perimeter wall, gazing down at them from a position of total dominance. Fire! Open fire and kill him! The deputy captain roared with bloodshot eyes. Dozens of rifles fired simultaneously, yet before the bullets could draw near, Kong Ming's form vanished into thin air. The next second, he reappeared outside the military manufacturing plant several kilometers away, proof of the devastating utility of his spatial mark teleportability. The factory's defenses were equally rigorous. 2 heavy machine guns mounted at the main entrance, and soldiers patrolling every inch of the walled compound. To Kong Ming, however, these defenses amounted to nothing at all. He teleported directly into the factory director's office. Before the man could react, a single use of soul control subdued him completely. He then ordered the director to recall all workshop guards under the pretense of emergency equipment maintenance. What followed was the familiar routine of total looting. Entire production lines, machine tools, casting molds, raw materials, finished ammunition rounds, grenades, every asset tied to weapons manufacturing was stripped clean. Even spare replacement parts and industrial lubricants stored in the factory warehouses vanished into his spatial storage. With this production line in his possession, he would be able to manufacture endless bullets and grenades as long as raw materials were available, eliminating all risk of ammunition shortages forever. By the time the guards realized the deception and stormed into the workshops, they found empty factory floors, not even a single screw left behind. Meanwhile, the main self-defense forces unit dispatched to reinforce the northern ammunition depot had arrived only to be swarmed by hordes of mutated zombies. Hundreds of troops clashed with over 1,000 zombies, instantly dragged into a brutal, deadly battle. Gunfire and guttural roars echoed through the night sky. It took a full hour to eliminate the horde, leaving the unit with heavy casualties. When they dragged their exhausted bodies back to the fuel depot and saw the completely emptied storage grounds, nearly every soldier collapsed on the spot from despair. Word of the disaster reached the Prime Minister's official residence in Tokyo. After listening to the report, Hikoshi Hage choked on his breath and collapsed backward rigidly in his chair. Prime Minister, Prime Minister, a flurry of chaotic rescue efforts followed. After a long moment, Hikoshi Hage regained consciousness. He pointed a trembling finger toward Osaka, his voice shaking with unbridled rage. Baka, Bakayaro, the fuel is gone, and the weapons production line is lost too. He intends to strip our nation of every last resource we own. Prime Minister, what do we do now? If this continues, we will not hold out much longer. His aides wore long, despairing faces. Hikoshi Hage gasped for air, his eyes burning with vicious malice. Keep searching. He must still be hiding in Osaka. Mobilize every available military unit to conduct carpet searches. Tear Osaka apart brick by brick if necessary. Find him at all costs. Additionally, contact the U.S. military garrison immediately. Inform them we have suffered a superhuman terrorist attack and request military support. In stark contrast to Japan's frantic despair, Chinese netizens online were celebrating wildly, filled with unbridled excitement. Holy hell, the entire fuel depot got cleaned out? This Ultraman hero is packing up every last resource the Japanese have. The weapons production line is gone too. From now on they can't even manufacture bullets. How will they fight the zombies? I'm dying laughing. They lured the main self-defense forces contingent off to fight zombies, only to have their home base stolen. That diversion tactic was masterful. This guy isn't just traveling, he's prepping Japan for the apocalypse ahead of schedule. The internet buzzed with jubilation, yet the atmosphere within China's emergency command center remained grave and solemn. Report: Comrade Kong Ming has sent new intelligence. He has secured complete blueprints and machinery for a full light weapons production line, which he will hand over to our military ordnance department. The elderly leader slammed his palm against the table in delight. Excellent news. This aid arrives at our hour of greatest need. Once the full apocalypse erupted, global industrial infrastructure would suffer catastrophic damage. Possessing an additional weapons production line meant far greater security and drastically improved sustained combat capacity for the military. Send a reply to thank him for his invaluable contributions to our nation. The elder spoke with solemn gravity. Also warn him that U.S. garrison troops may intervene, and he must exercise extreme caution. Back in Tokyo, Hikoshi Hage received the reply he had awaited. Prime Minister, the U.S. Forces Japan Command has responded. A secretary stumbled frantically into the temporary conference room of the official residence, his face glowing with wild elation. A Delta Force team under the 7th Fleet has departed via helicopter and will arrive in Osaka in 1 hour. They stated that a single superhuman poses no threat against modern military hardware. Hikoshi Hage, who had slouched limply in his chair, shot upright instantly, a fierce glint blazing in his eyes. Perfect, this is perfect. Order them to capture that Chinese man alive. I will personally cut him to pieces. All the aides in the room breathed a collective sigh of relief, clinging to this final lifeline. A string of crushing defeats had pushed them to the brink of collapse. Their grain reserves, fuel stockpiles, and arms manufacturing capacity were all lost, and the self-defense forces had merely become target practice. Now that the United States had stepped in, they believed the crisis was all but resolved. Issue orders for all self-defense forces units in Osaka to fully cooperate with U.S. operations and provide every piece of intelligence they request. Hikoshi Hage waved his hand, his tone regaining its usual arrogant smugness. I refuse to believe one single Chinese man can defeat the world's most powerful U.S. military. At that very moment, inside the study of Ikemoto's villa in Osaka, Kong Ming ran his fingertips across his phone screen, reading the message sent from China's Emergency Command Center. U.S. garrison special forces have been deployed. Equipped with thermal imaging, drones, and individual missile launchers, their target is almost certainly you. Exercise extreme caution. So they've finally come. Kong Ming set his phone down, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Beside him, Ikemoto Sakurako entered carrying a plate of freshly sliced A5 Wagyu sashimi. Her face paled slightly upon reading the message. Master, U.S. Special Forces, should we lay low and avoid them? Their equipment far surpasses the self-defense forces. As a Japanese native, a deep-seated fear of American military power lingered within her. Avoid them. Kong Ming laughed softly, pulling the young girl into his embrace and brushing his fingertips across her delicate cheek. Why run? They've walked right into my grasp to help me raise my proficiency. I'd love to see exactly how many resources the U.S. military has at their disposal. Hours of relentless high-intensity looting had left him somewhat fatigued. After a moment of gentle caressing Sakurako, Kong Ming leaned back in his chair to rest his eyes, planning his next move. Shortly afterward, Ikemoto Tanson's voice crackled through the walkie-talkie. Master, 12 unidentified personnel in full black tactical gear have been spotted 300 meters east of the financial center, advancing stealthily this way. They appear to be special forces. Kong Ming stretched lazily, pulling his hand away from Sakurako's thighs as he stood and spoke in a low, steady tone. Understood. He turned to Sakurako to issue a warning. Stay inside the villa and lock all doors. Do not step outside, no matter what commotion you hear. Yes, master. Sakurako nodded obediently. Kong Ming donned his Ultraman suit, his figure flickering as he teleported atop a high-rise building overlooking the financial center. The night was pitch black. At the far end of the street, 12 fully armed figures advanced rapidly, using buildings for cover. Each soldier wore night vision goggles, their rifles fitted with suppressors. Their movements were precise and fluid, clearly seasoned veterans with years of combat experience. Not bad. They looked the part. Kong Ming watched from the shadows on the rooftop with idle amusement. The next instant, thermal scanners on the ground locked onto the heat signature atop the roof. The lead squad leader snapped his head upward, his pupils constricting, and slammed a hand to his radio. Target on the rooftop. Team 1 provides covering fire. Team 2 flanks the rear. Team 3 deploy grenade launchers. The second the order was issued, 3 U.S. soldiers raised their rifles in unison. Bullets whistled through the air toward the rooftop. Rat-a-tat-tat-tat. The dense hail of bullets slammed into an invisible barrier half a meter in front of Kong Ming, bouncing harmlessly off the ground. His spatial shield remained unharmed, without a single scratch. Impossible. The squad leader's eyes widened in stunned disbelief down on the street. They carried standard NATO 5.56mm rounds, capable of piercing body armor plates at close range. Yet they could not even draw near the target's body. Grenade launchers. Fire grenades, he roared sharply. 2 soldiers hoisted grenade launchers at once, took aim at the rooftop, and pulled the triggers. Boom, boom. 2 deafening blasts sent fireballs surging skyward. Half the roof caved in instantly, shards of stone flying everywhere. Through thick clouds of smoke, the squad leader fixed his glare on the blast's epicenter, a cold smirk tugging at his mouth. No matter how powerful a superhuman might be, could they possibly withstand grenade detonations? But the next second, a mocking voice echoed right behind him. That's all the firepower you've got? This is the full might of the U.S. military. Every hair on the squad leader's body stood on end. He spun sharply, gun barrel pointed straight backward. Yet there was no one there, not a single silhouette in sight. Looking for me? The voice drifted over from his left. He whipped his head around again, still nothing but empty space. An icy chill shot straight up from his soles to the top of his skull. What speed was this? Teleportation? Captain, emergency. Team 3 has gone radio silent. The panicked voice of the Team 2 lead crackled over the walkie-talkie. The squad leader's heart lurched. He'd barely opened his mouth to reply when a shrill scream sounded right beside his ear. He snapped his head around and watched a soldier beside him suddenly glaze over with empty eyes. Without hesitation, the soldier swiveled his rifle and pulled the trigger on his comrades. Rat-a-tat-tat. The unforeseen burst of gunfire cut 2 men down in an instant. Have you lost your mind? The squad leader's eyes bulged with rage. This was only the beginning. One soldier after another slipped into a vacant stupor, turning their firearms on their fellow troops. Bullets ricocheted wildly down the narrow alley, screams ringing out nonstop. Within 30 seconds, the 12-man Special Forces squad descended into chaotic mutual slaughter. Level 2 Soul Control granted a mass control cap of 10 targets, more than enough to overwhelm this unit. Kong Ming's figure materialized atop the building. He looked down upon the bloody farce. He was overcome with unprecedented delight. It proved that spatial markers paired with spatial teleportation were utterly overpowered, a broken game mechanic. Minutes later, silence fell across the alley. Not a single one of the 12 Delta Force commandos survived. All had perished. Kong Ming casually stripped every piece of gear from their bodies, as well as the stone etched with his spatial marker on the ground. It seems that once I lay my groundwork, I am God within this board game. Kong Ming's gaze drifted toward the southern suburbs of Osaka. Since these troops had traveled all this way to throw their lives away, it would be a waste not to empty their supply depot. With a mere thought, his figure vanished from the spot entirely. 1 hour later, inside the conference room of the Prime Minister's official residence, Hamashita Momo and a cohort of senior officials sat restlessly, waiting for good news. Why haven't we received word yet? The operation should have wrapped up ages ago, one official muttered anxiously. Delta Force is on the job. They'll wrap this up effortlessly. They're probably clearing the scene right now. His words had barely faded when a secretary stumbled and scrambled into the room, gasping. Prime Minister. Disaster. The Delta Squad, every single member, is dead. Furthermore, the U.S. military supply base in the southern suburbs has been completely ransacked. All military supplies, individual combat gear, stockpiled ammunition, and fuel, everything is gone. The announcement hit like a thunderclap. Hamashita Momo staggered, spat blood, and crumpled backward to the floor. Prime Minister. Chaos erupted among the assembled officials. The U.S. military base had been robbed? These were American garrison troops, the world's top fighting force, and they couldn't stop this man. What hope did Japan even have left? Meanwhile, the Emergency Command Center in Beijing, China. Report. The U.S. supply base in southern Osaka has been looted, The entire Delta Force squad wiped out. We confirm the perpetrator is Comrade Kong Ming. The liaison's voice trembled with barely suppressed excitement. A stunned hush fell over the conference room for several seconds, followed by a collective intake of shocked breaths. An entire U.S. Special Forces unit annihilated? And he emptied their supply depot on top of it? That combat power, it's beyond outrageous. The elderly man leading the meeting fell silent for a moment, then slammed his palm hard against the table. Excellent work. Brilliant. Send an immediate reply. Warn him to exercise extreme caution. The U.S. 7th Fleet may launch retaliatory strikes. Yes, sir. Night hung heavy outside the windows, yet a blazing fire ignited in every person's heart. The blood debts Japan owed would finally be repaid. Back at the villa, Kong Ming had retreated to the study. After a full day of near non-stop looting, most supplies across the Kansai region had been stowed away in his spatial storage. Kong Ming pulled up his system interface and skimmed the stats. Host, Kong Ming. Superpowers, Spatial Storage LV.5 Proficiency, 320/1600, Soul Control LV.2 Proficiency, 7200ths. Physique, 50 average human baseline, 8. Mental power, 21 average human baseline, 8. Spatial storage utilized, 10. Not bad. I've gained a great deal of progress. A satisfied smirk tugged at Kong Ming's lips. The U.S. base had held staggering stockpiles. He'd fully replenished every type of advanced combat equipment, plus seized heavy firepower, including missiles and explosives. Osaka likely held nothing more worth plundering. His next target, sweep through central Japan and the Kanto region. Early the next morning, news sent all of Japan into total shock. The U.S. Osaka Garrison Supply Depot had been stripped bare. The entire Delta Force unit was eliminated, and the culprit remained at large. Online public opinion exploded completely. Even the U.S. military can't beat him? Are we truly doomed? Who exactly is this Ultraman figure? He's practically a god. What is the government even doing? Food's gone, fuel's gone, and now we can't rely on the U.S. military either. Are we just meant to wait for death? Panic swept across the archipelago like a tsunami. Supermarkets and convenience stores across every major city had been ransacked days prior. Now even street vending machines lay smashed to pieces. More and more civilians turned to violent looting. The number of humans mutating into zombies rose steadily as well. Inside Tokyo's prime minister's residence, Himashita Momo, only recently revived after collapsing, stared at the civil unrest report. Half her hair had turned white overnight. Baka, worthless fools. What word have we received from the U.S. military? She shrieked hoarsely. An aide trembled as he replied. T-top U.S. command states, the suspect moves too erratically for conventional troops to engage. They've dispatched carrier-based aircraft from the 7th Fleet to launch a blanket search across Osaka. A blanket search? By the time they track him down, Tokyo will have been stripped clean. Himashita Momo shook with unbridled rage. Issue orders, full city-wide martial law across Tokyo. Deploy extra Imperial Guard divisions to secure key locations. Secure the Imperial Palace, the Bank of Japan, and the National Central Stockpile vaults. Her greatest fear now was that this deadly man would set his sights on Tokyo. Kansai was already lost. If Tokyo fell too, Japan would be finished. And Kong Ming was already on his way. Time was limited. He could not possibly loot every scrap of supplies across Japan. But no critical stockpile would escape his grasp. That afternoon, Kong Ming settled into the top-floor suite of a 5-star hotel in central Tokyo. He overlooked the bustling Tokyo skyline below, lost in thought. Beside him, Ibata Sakurako wore a formal pencil skirt suit, holding a tablet as she reported softly. Master, the Imperial Palace is guarded by an entire battalion of the Imperial Guard. It houses gold, jewelry, and cultural artifacts collected by every imperial dynasty throughout history. It also holds a portion of the nation's strategic reserves of rare metals and pharmaceuticals. Additionally, the Bank of Japan's underground vault lies in Nyanbashi, holding approximately 800 tons of gold plus massive reserves of foreign exchange cash. Yokosuka Naval Port in Tokyo Bay hosts several self-defense force destroyers, alongside a U.S. military fuel supply station. After listening, Kong Ming wore an amused grin. Truly treasures stretching everywhere I look. At the same time, terrified of Kong Ming's elusive teleportation ability, Himashita Momo had fled to an underground bunker. She placed another desperate distress call to General Smith, commander of U.S. Forces Japan. General Smith. He has almost certainly reached Tokyo by now. The Central Bank and Imperial Palace face imminent danger. You must deploy troops immediately. General Smith's face showed clear irritation on the video screen. The annihilation of Delta Force and the loss of the supply depot had already thoroughly humiliated him. The Japanese Prime Minister's frantic demands for military action only fueled his contempt. Prime Minister, our carrier air wing is fully deployed. U.S. Special Forces will coordinate with your Imperial Guard divisions to set up 3-layered encirclement zones. Thermal imaging and sonic detectors cover every inch. Not even a fly could slip past our perimeter. Smith spoke haughtily. But I must make one thing clear. If we capture him, the U.S. military retains exclusive rights to research his superhuman abilities. Hemashida Momo agreed without a second thought. Whatever you want. All I care about is seeing him dead. Overnight, an impenetrable dragnet was laid across Tokyo. 2,000 self-defense force troops partnered with 12 U.S. Special Forces teams to conduct block-by-block blanket sweeps. Drones circled overhead. Armored vehicles led ground advances, and vibration sensors lined every sewer tunnel. They were convinced that tightening the encirclement and deploying sonic waves to disrupt mental power would flush Kong Ming out into the open. Meanwhile, Kong Ming sat unhurriedly in the rotating restaurant atop Tokyo Tower, slicing through a Wagyu steak. Not far outside the windows, lines of armored vehicle headlights glowed as they slowly closed in on his position. Quite the commotion they're making. Kong Ming set down his knife and fork, an amused smile playing on his lips. He could win a direct head-on fight, but it would be exhausting and utterly dull. He pulled out his phone and pulled up Japan's official live broadcast channel. To calm public unrest, the government had launched a 24/7 live stream titled Operation to Neutralize the Superhuman Fugitive. The host rambled on at length, boasting endlessly about the Allied forces' invincibility. The whole nation's watching. How could I not put on a spectacular show for them? Kong Ming snapped his fingers, and his figure vanished from the restaurant in an instant. At the easternmost edge of the encirclement, the Vanguard Delta Force unit advanced under building cover. Static burst over the squad leader's headset, followed by a garbled order cutting through the noise. Alert! Self-defense force troops, disguised by the superhuman lie ahead, opened fire immediately. The squad leader shot his head up and spotted a fully armed platoon of self-defense force soldiers charging down the intersection, panicking and shouting unintelligible Japanese. Hostiles! Fire! Without hesitation, the squad leader issued the order, and more than a dozen rifles spit fire simultaneously. The self-defense force troops were already on edge, and the sudden U.S. gunfire cut dozens down on the spot. The surviving soldiers flew into a blind rage. Baka! The Americans are shooting us. Return fire. A vicious street firefight erupted between the two sides, bullets flying and explosions echoing non-stop. This was merely the opening act. Kong Ming darted between every clash zone, unleashing soul control and planting false orders, thoroughly enjoying the chaos he'd sown. In less than 30 minutes, the U.S.-Japanese Allied encirclement collapsed from within. Self-defense force troops believed the U.S. military was deliberately sabotaging them to settle old scores. U.S. troops suspected self-defense force ranks were infiltrated by the superhuman smoles. The fighting grew bloodier by the minute, impossible to halt. The live broadcast captured Allied forces slaughtering one another, and the comment section blew up instantly. Did I see that right? Friendly fire on each other. I'm laughing so hard. U.S. troops shooting the self-defense force. This is the vaunted bilateral alliance. Ultraman hasn't even lifted a finger, and they're killing each other already? Inside the underground bunker, Hemashida Momo trembled with rage as she watched the live feed. Baka, who ordered them to open fire. Cease fire at once. But her commands fell on deaf ears. Both sides were blinded by bloodlust, each convinced the other were traitors. By then, Kong Ming had slipped unnoticed into Yokota U.S. Air Force Base amid the widespread chaos. The base's main combat units had all been dispatched for the city-wide manhunt, leaving only a skeleton crew of guards. Kong Ming headed straight for the hangars, letting out a low whistle at the rows of brand-new F-35 fighter jets lined up before him. What marvelous loot! Not a single jet remained. Every last aircraft vanished into his spatial storage. Within 10 minutes, all 12 F-35s had been stowed in his system space. The adjacent ammunition depots, fuel bunkers, and precision equipment warehouses met the exact same fate. Before departing, Kong Ming set a looping Ultraman meme to play on the main command center's massive screen, captioned simply, "Thanks for the gear, U.S. Military bros." When General Smith received word of the base breach and raced back with his men, he found nothing but empty tarmacs and the looping Ultraman graphic on the screen. The battle-hardened U.S. general threw his military cap to the ground in unbridled fury. Launch a full investigation. Did the Japanese deliberately pull our troops away to collude with that superhuman and set us up? Already strained by the friendly fire massacre, U.S. and Japanese relations shattered completely. U.S. officials accused Japan of leaking intelligence to sabotage their operation. Japanese authorities accused the U.S. military of abandoning their post and losing advanced fighter jets. Both sides passed the buck endlessly, and the joint manhunt plan died before it could fully launch. U.S. and Japanese troops retreated from Tokyo's streets, shouting accusations at one another, leaving carnage and bodies scattered everywhere. The mastermind behind all this chaos moved on to raid multiple national supply stockpiles, looting freely without restraint. Only after stowing the majority of Tokyo's reserves in his spatial storage did he return to his downtown hotel suite. He uncorked a bottle of 1982 Lafite, sipped the wine, and scrolled through the raging online comment sections. A satisfied grin curved Kong Ming's lips. That night, he'd earned masses of superpower proficiency, seized mountains of gear and supplies, destroyed the U.S.-Japanese joint operation, and watched the two forces tear each other apart. For gains from one single plan, an absolute windfall. Back at the Beijing Emergency Command Center in China, when the liaison finished reporting every detail of Kong Ming's exploits, a deathly silence blanketed the room, which then erupted into unrestrained laughter. This Kong Ming, he's devious beyond words. One official shook his head with amusement, clear admiration shining in his eyes. The elderly lead official could not hold back a smile either. Using one rival to attack another, defeating the enemy without direct combat. This boy has the makings of a brilliant strategist. He paused, wiping the amusement from his face. 3 days remain until the full-scale Aura revival. Issue orders for all national defense units to raise alert levels to maximum readiness. The next day, Japan's social order teetered on the brink of total collapse. Grain prices had surged 20-fold. Paper currency was worthless, and civilians resorted to bartering goods instead. Looting, vandalism, and rioting erupted on every street corner, far beyond police control. The number of mutated monsters flooding hospitals multiplied, their screams and roars audible blocks away. To calm public unrest, Hamashita Momo followed her aide's advice and announced a live broadcast. National Treasury Open Day. The Minister of Finance and Bank of Japan governor would appear on camera, unlock the underground vaults, and showcase the nation's ample gold reserves and emergency supplies. Their goal was to reassure the public. The government held sufficient stockpiles, so there was no need for panic. The announcement prompted every household across Japan to huddle before their screens. Gold and grain were humanity's only remaining valuable commodities, and faith in national reserves was all that kept the populace from anarchy. The live stream began promptly at 2 in the afternoon. On camera, Finance Minister Tanaka stood rigid before the Bank of Japan's vault entrance, delivering a rousing speech to the nation. Citizens, rest assured, our national reserves are abundant, gold, foreign exchange, grain, all fully stocked, more than enough to see us through this crisis.